We have some new people. Let me get them on screen. I'm very excited. We got some brand new individuals showing up. Love to see it. Thank you for the follow. I love to see it. Let me get your beautiful faces on screen. Ah, fuck, God damn it. Hold on. There we go. There we go.
It's like you're trying to raid somebody right now, man. Come on.
Yeah,
You've been
right.
doing this too long.
Okay. So, first of all, thank you, Debatebore. Thank you, Crystal. Thank you, Spaniard, for being around. And we have two new individuals who we have Coffee Politics. Hello, Coffee Politics. Thank you for being here. Nice to
Hey,
meet you.
how's it going on?
Hey. Yeah, we're doing well.
Good.
We've been having a fantastic discussion tonight, and we're glad to have you. Dooby, get in here, Dooby. We love to have you here as well, friend. And then also we have Isle of Isles. That's a fun name. But Isle of Isles. Hello, hey, how are you?
Thank you. I'm doing fine. I was listening to the stream, and I was enjoying it really much, and so I wanted to come on and share my opinions. I'm a Brooklynite ready to fight on these topics, and hoping to have a good time.
Fantastic, great. And finally we have Iko Rich. Hey, Iko Rich,
Yeah.
you've been in our chat before. Hey, thank you.
Yeah, I've been subbing for a few months.
Oh yeah, I haven't. I don't think I think it's the first time I've actually seen you. Is that correct?
Yes, I've actually
Okay.
never been on a panel of any kind.
Oh, well, welcome.
First time.
I'm very happy to see new faces. All of you, very much welcome. All right, so why don't we start with the newest people, and what are your thoughts on this? What side are you on, and what do you think was been happening?
Uh, you,
Anyone,
You
I'll
anyone
go
know,
in front of
first.
you?
Okay. I guess I'll
Go
go
ahead.
first. So, yeah, I mean, I am very disappointed that Roe v. Wade got overturned. I mean, okay, on one hand, I did agree on the decision because I did feel like it should be up to the states because I don't think it's necessarily a federal issue. However, on the other hand, I'm still very much pro-choice, and so you know, uh, and I also live in a state that's like very, very anti-abortion as well. So, yeah, so that was unfortunate for me. Um, I know a lot of people are like, oh, well, if you're a guy, you're not affected, but I do feel like guys are pretty affected, especially if you're in a relationship, right? It's kind of scary that, you know, I don't know. I mean, if necessarily if you don't wear protection or if something wrong happens, right, a mishap, you could end up like having a baby for the rest of 18 years or a child for the next 18 years is really bad. So yeah, I mean, yeah, so hopefully my state like what right now what I'm just hoping for is like my state to elect a governor that's able to like withhold the rights for abortion and all that. But yeah, so not much I can say.
Uh, some people Some people felt like your mic is a bit low.
Really?
Just letting you know that. Yeah.
Okay.
I could hear you, but maybe it's because I had the volume pretty loud in my headphones. So just be aware of that. But
Is
yeah,
there
thank you so much.
any
I heard.
is there any
What?
way I can turn up my mic or
Yeah, you could turn out possibly gain on your mic. Like it depends on what mic you're using, really.
yeah?
But yeah, maybe I try messing with the gain there. Or Yeah, the volume type settings.
Okay.
Has the option to turn up your mic too as well. So.
Okay, yeah, consider that.
Yeah,
But
that's
I can hear you though. So,
Okay, cool.
Aiko, you wanted to go ahead?
Oh, sure, yeah. Anytime I approach this issue or a wide variety of issues, it always seems to me that it comes down to the question of consent. And it seems to me that people don't factor in consent for a wide variety of the social issues that we're talking about today. And in this case, it's ongoing consent to allow your body to be used for the process of gestating a fetus to term. And it's difficult to imagine that you would approach this in any other way, with any other issue, where you just would disregard consent entirely. And to me, that's an issue that the court has to address, and hasn't. I don't think it was even addressed in Roe. They found another way of getting there, but it's.
Can I say something?
Please go ahead.
Do we need consent for the sun to go up and the sun to set?
No, but the sun going up is something that's kind of outside of our control. It's also something.
Amen. Amen. Outside
if
of
we-
our control.
Outside of our control, and if we were to have the ability to control that, then you would need the consent of the entire population of the Earth.
And it wouldn't be gathered. Couldn't. That's the sovereignty of God.
Well, it's funny that you say that because there's an old story, and I don't even know if it's true, that somebody once asked Ayn Rand because she believed in a lot of what we today consider conservative principles of ownership and capitalism. And somebody once asked her, well, if someone had the ability to turn off the sun, should they be allowed to? And she said yes.
Really interesting. That's an interesting statement. Let's go to Isle, please.
Yeah, I think that, I'm a little bit disappointed that, the Roe versus Wade got struck down because I think that, the way it was pretty much the compromise that I think we should have, that where, it should be safe, legal, and rare. And, I'm seeing lots of like extremism on both sides. I'm seeing like some states trying to ban it outright, some states trying to go like super far with it. And it's kind of like concerning.
Thank you. And Spaniard.
I'm gonna throw the big giant monkey wrench. I'm in the middle. I can see both sides of what the left and the right are saying. For me, I'm not. I don't know how I put myself out there. Like, I don't know if I'm pro-life or pro-choice. I keep saying I'm pro-situational. So I'm just going to be the monkey wrench in this one.
Okay, we'll do that. We'll do that later. We'll do that later. Crystal. So yeah, what are your general thoughts?
I think that it is perhaps one of the most important gifts that a woman or a person can ever be given. And to say no to it, no matter the choice of the timing, seems right or seems wrong, which many adults or many young people will tell you they were never ready, they never had enough money. And one of them, I kept waiting for the right money, the right time, enough money. And then it just was clear to me, no, there was never going to be enough money or the right time. So that's I do see it as a gift from God. And I guess I go from that place. I believe that it is a life. I think that, when it was a conversation with Stardust one night, and like I just said to, I think someone in the chat, I said, and I was like, I think you're being disingenuous. And she went off on me because she was going about how it's so true. There's all these women and they have other children and there's no money. And I'm thinking in the middle of the night, I'm like, oh my God, give them all the money, give UBI. I know my church. I know that when I left the hospital, they give you formula, they give you diapers, they set you up. They give you a 24/7 hour number to call. I mean, there's a lot of support that maybe people aren't aware of. And I was just like, well, that's why I think she's disingenuous, because if I said to her, as I said to you, okay, give them all that money, give them a house, give them support. Now how do you feel about their choice to abort? And you both would definitely, I'm guessing she'd say the same too. No, it's still a right. It's still her body. Well, then that goes against what you're just saying when it's an issue of money. It's not.
So I think you maybe misunderstand me. I want to support women's choices, right? So whatever that choice may be. So if that choice is to start a family, to raise a child, or to invite a new child into a pre-existing family, whether it be biologically or through adoption, right? I want to give them all the options. I want to lower all the barriers. So I want to give them like that care package you're talking about. I was talking about, let's actually make that a thing. Let's make that a thing here in the States. Let's give out care packages to expectant mothers, right? I would like to vastly expand that program. I'm glad that your church does that, right? So that's actually fantastic that you guys have that ability. But that not everyone has that, right? It's very scary to be a mother, to start that, and to think that you will get no support in this country. So I absolutely want to give them support, but it's less to start new life, more to have those choices, right? I think part of liberty in this country is includes the freedom to start a family, right? And but doing that requires a lot of help. It requires a lot of support. So I would give them that. But also, part of that freedom is reproductive health care, right? In all its forms, including abortion services.
You call
So
it reproductive health care, and I'm not going to choke on that one right now. But no, it's still, and that's where the difference between us, and respectfully so. I understand you see it as a choice. I saw it as a choice at one time as well, and supported women, and young women and people doing that. So yeah, I understand that to you it sees a choice, and so for me, I guess becomes the how for people to look in, if you get down to just that part, a choice, and it's a woman's body, is what does it take to realize you may be on the wrong side of like a looking glass? That's where I guess I am more interested, because there's such a clinging to that it's a decision, a choice, a choice. The decisions and the choices go before sex. I mean, they just generally do.
Okay. So we'll don't worry, we're gonna get back to all of you. I want to make sure Debatebore gets in. Debatebore friend, love to hear what you have to say.
Hey, Prime. Thanks again for opening up the panel and letting some of us schmucks get in here and argue with each other and with you. I think I'm excited. I'm really excited that Roe was overturned and reversed. It was eh, like the National Review editorial indicated, it was the Roe decision was roundly criticized for its weak legal reasoning from the very first days that the decision was released. And I think what's wrong with this conversation so far is the argument of the merits of Roe and whether it should have been sustained or it should have been reversed is being conflated with the topic of abortion and whether or not women ought to be able to get abortion, whether or not abortion should be restricted or not, and those types of questions. I think Roe was just a terribly unjust decision when it was first decided. The court invented its own authority to do so, invented a right out of thin air that was already based on a right that was previously invented. From the shadows of these various constitutional amendments with the right to privacy. So, Roe has had devastating effects on the political processes in the U.S. Ever since this decision. We saw judicial appointments become corrupted by the abortion issue. We saw, a political party, maybe both, make abortion a litmus test for whether or not somebody ought to be nominated and confirmed to the court. It corrupted our political processes in electing public officials, from the president all the way down to our state legislatures. And so consequently, Roe never settled anything at all. And that it's overturned now and properly places the abortion of issue back in the democratic processes, the correct political channels, I think is a great thing.
Okay.
I guess the one thing I would agree with you on this narrow piece is that, like, I found a compelling case that the case, Roe v. Wade, short circuited the political fight that needed to happen on this issue. That, you know, unlike I guess, what ended up happening with gay rights, right? Like gay rights was a fight state by state, right? Until eventually there was a tipping point, and then the court stepped in. But uh, for Roe, like that fight didn't really happen, right? There was a few states in which it was legal, and most states where it was restricted. But like we didn't have that democratic process in which we convinced people that my side was the correct side. Now, over the years, I guess opinion polls have kind of trended in my direction, but still, I think that there is a value to that fight. Just like to a certain extent, there's a value to the fight for gay marriage. That when we had those disgusting battles about like how like once you allow gay marriage, well then you'll allow bestiality or some shit like that. Like things like that were terrible at the time, but like we had it out. We had a big fight. I so to a certain extent, I I am excited to actually have this conversation with the American people.
Yeah. So can I butt in for a second, or?
Please.
Yeah. So I guess what I kind of noticed, right, and I think Debatebore mentioned this, right, is that a lot of people are kind of conflating the fact that Roe v. Wade got overturned to it being an abortion issue, right? Which I mean, that's one thing I would definitely agree with him on. Like, it's not necessarily uh like whether you're anti-abortion or you're pro-choice, yada yada, is more so like the way they've done it. And that's kind of why I've kind of agreed myself that yeah, I do agree that Roe v. Wade should have probably been overturned and it should be a state right issue. But I'm still pro-choice myself. So I'm kind of wondering if debate board, if you're also pro-choice, or if you're like, what are your actual positions on abortion, and um, if maybe the others, if they actually do care about whether or not abortion should be a state right issue or not. So,
Sure. I think my original point about the conflation is that when folks attempt to talk about Roe and the validity of sustaining it or overturning it, often devolves into a conversation argument about abortion itself, right? Which is completely irrelevant to the question of whether Roe was properly decided or not. As for my positions on it, I'm not sure, because it seems to me that in the last decade or so, the phrases pro-choice and pro-life have evolved, whether by our choice or simply by momentum in the public sphere. But I would say that I'm pro-life because I think that unborn baby warrants protections from the state. And consequently, that leads me to believe that states should be restricting or regulating abortion, a position that a majority of Americans have held, actually since Roe anyway. Pro-choice seems to have evolved into unlimited, no restrictions at all abortion, and that's not that's not a position held by even a majority of the minority of folks who think Roe should have been sustained. So consequently, I'm more pro-life. I think the baby deserves protections from the state, and I don't think that the federal government had any role or any authority to dabble in this, and that the individual states and their political processes are the correct place to determine what those restrictions look like.
I have to agree with Debatebore here. I think that I'm more of a pro-life type of person, but and I think that like I was saying before, with how it was in the '90s, safe, legal, and rare. I think that people trying to say that it's okay to have like late second and then third trimester abortions is a kind of a bit of a yikesy thing personally for me, and I don't really like that. But I think that that's not to the spirit of that. But I also think that to that compromising, I think that we should allow it to make like be like through the first trimester be like unrestricted is like my personal thing in it, my thoughts on the matter. And so I would, now that Roe's away, I would like maybe if we had to have a country stand standard via legislation, maybe I would just say like maybe like a 12 or 15 week limit on it, and then we just leave it there, and then which would be pretty much what Roe and Casey were saying anyway, with viability, because viability, as time and technology keeps going, is going to keep going backwards and backwards eventually anyway. So I think if we just have it like first trimester you can do whatever you want, and then after that, different states can change the goalpost around, but I think the first trimester you should be able to get it if you really need it, and you should always be able to get it if the mother's life is in danger, or in cases of rape or incest. I think is like also very important.
Yeah, and I think Isle of Isles. Wait, how do you say your name again? Sorry. Um,
Oh, Isle of Isles.
yeah, Isle of Isles. I think what you said was pretty important, right? So I want to ask Debatebore. So in the case of rape, right? If a female got raped, should they be able to be allowed to have an abortion, or do you just feel like you should protect the baby's life no matter what?
No, I'm of the mind that if there, rape, incest, there are specific, vanishingly low number of complicated pregnancies that put the mother's life in jeopardy. In chat, I just mentioned something about. Oh God, the word is just escaping me right now. What is that fourth instance? And actual valid cases of severe mental health problems, right? There's a mental health exception that was invented by the courts to justify abortions. But what really happened is a to-be mother would simply claim that they didn't want to have the baby, and doctors would claim a mental health exception for this, and it's been vastly abused. But in those legitimate, valid cases, I'd be siding with abortion then.
Okay, so if oh sorry,
Coffee, keep going, and then after that we'll go to Aiko.
okay, sorry, I just want to clarify. So you said okay, so in the case of intense mental disability or mental issues, and if the female is raped, they should have the right to abortion, right? Is that what you said?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, not right to an abortion, but abortion should be permissible in those instances. I don't think there is a right to abortion. This language of right to abortion is seriously delusional. The court invented this thing out of thin air to mollify
all invented out of thin air.
specific
The
groups.
fuck you fucking...
What do you mean? Tell me more.
Well,
I mean, sure, the Constitution was invented out of thin air, but again, this concept that that courts and that bureaucrats should be able to confer rights upon us is bullshit. That's not the structure of our Constitution. That's not the intellectual foundation of our Constitution.
Are you fucking kidding me?
No, I'm not kidding you. I'm sorry you're having a problem with this, but maybe you should
No,
take a deep
I'm
breath.
not. You're just like, you're throwing out
Blew your mind and
alternative
melted you
history
down.
bullshit.
I'm sorry that history is so upsetting to you.
It's not upsetting.
So hold on.
It's a matter of history.
No, it's fine. I just want to give a shot to Aiko. Aiko's been waiting.
Yeah, Aiko, sorry about that, dude.
Okay.
My bad.
No,
I'm
that's
an
okay.
asshole.
So let me just respond to that rights thing for a minute, because I don't think it's fair to say the entire Constitution came out of thin air. Jefferson did say that it came off of principles that were self-evident, which might sound like thin air, but I would argue that it's a little bit more important than that. But I had a response to a Debatebore. I think a lot of people are going to be responding to Debatebore in this panel.
Yeah.
You're getting that too?
Yeah. But my response is really to this notion that first we have to figure out who gets to decide, whether it's federal government or the states. And then we can decide this important issue of the right to life versus the right to bodily integrity. And I would argue that if you're in a pro-life world and you're going to say that there is a right to life that trumps bodily integrity, then I would argue that would then become an inalienable right, right? Life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness, life comes first. So if you're going to say that that's the number one thing that trumps everything else, then it would have to be something that the federal government has authority over, because it would be an inherent right that no state has a right to take away. Right? So
I
in
think
that
what you're
world,
saying
wouldn't you be for the
is
federal government?
that we see this right, that there's a protection, right, for life, that the state has an interest in protecting life. And I think that's what that, pursuit of life, liberty, happiness means, is it's carving out a space for the national government to do something to protect life. Now, how abortion fits in there, how do you drag abortion then into the federal scope of authority? It's not interstate commerce. It's not the general welfare clause. It's right. So that's
It's an individual's right to bodily autonomy.
Oh, sure. Again, we're just inventing rights out of thin air. Bodily autonomy, abortion. We'll call it whatever we want. But so I think you're fundamentally misunderstanding what a right is. Right? A right is an entitlement to something. A right in the context
You're not entitled
of government
to rule your own fucking body. Are you fucking kidding me?
Let him respond.
So, a right is an entitlement to something. The entitlement only matters, right, if it can be enforced and protected. Okay. Now, you want to appeal here to bodily autonomy, right? And so you're all for the federal government in insisting that all people be vaccinated against the flu, correct?
Yeah.
Or not? Sure. But what about my bodily autonomy? You believe every should required to get the COVID vaccine?
Sure.
What about my
There's
bodily
a difference
autonomy?
when it's good for public health as opposed
See,
to
bodily autonomy
limiting
only
somebody's
matters
bodily autonomy.
when you want to enforce it. But when someone else wants to enforce it, bodily autonomy now is a different matter. It's differences.
No.
See the inconsistency there?
Can I just respond to that one? Because this is something that comes. This is something that comes up a lot in these debates, these analogies. And it seems to me that one is a different analogy because a fetus is not contagious, right? It can't spread to other people and make them pregnant too, in which case the state would have a very different interest than it does with regards to vaccines.
But can we hold them there for just 1 second, Aiko? I'm sorry, just real quick. So, okay, the organism is not the point of the analogy. The point of the analogy is the appeal to a right of bodily autonomy. This is why the analogy works. This is why it's comparable.
No, right.
No, it's not.
That there are also things that can any given right can be trumped by another right. And the fact that there's can spread throughout populations makes it fundamentally different, and it means other rights come into play. And one of those rights is the right to life, which, if you're saying that the right to life trumps bodily integrity, then it does in that instance as well. But there's another analogy that doesn't involve infectious diseases that gets used in abortion debates a lot, and it's the analogy that says, let's say there are 5 people who all have terminal kidney disease, liver disease, and all of these things. And there's a healthy person who has all of those things. And if you were to have a transplant those organs out, or let's just say you only have one person and it's liver disease. All you have to do is cut that liver in half. That's how those donations occur. And you can donate it to that person and save that person's life. And then the person who's donating the liver in 9 months, let's say, will have the liver grows back. Right, that's generally what happens. However, the person who can donate that liver does not consent. Can you force that donation? Can you violate the person's bodily integrity in order to save a life?
No.
No. Okay, so you're pro-choice.
Okay. Again, see what's happened to the conversation here is that we've devolved away from actually talking about Roe to now not dipping our toes, but jumping full body into a conversation of whether or not abortion is correct or not, right? So again, a right to abortion, I found the language to be problematic, right? The right to abortion is what the court invented in Roe, right? It invented it by finding this right in the shadows of a right to privacy, which itself was found in the shadows of several of the first 8 amendments, right? So the right to an abortion, right? I don't know where this comes from. Where does this entitlement derive from? And somebody appealed to bodily autonomy. And yet we can see several instances where there is not a universal right to bodily autonomy, to where there is an unlimited right to bodily autonomy. And we had the person who appealed to it actually express in 2 different scenarios that they would violate someone's bodily autonomy for the government to require them to do something with their body.
For completely different things.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter if it's for completely
For the
different
record, I
things.
would not force the liver donation.
If I can
Well, that's good.
get in, because rights have been mentioned a lot, and I think it's important that we actually like think about it. Like, where do rights come from? Because in our founding documents, it said that human beings are endowed by their creator with these inalienable rights of life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. And so, if you believe that God grants you human rights and that government, gives you extra rights, civil rights, for example, like in the Bill of Rights and all the other amendments thereafter, I think we have to decide, like, at some point, when does the unborn get human rights and when do they get civil rights? And if they apply for these rights, will we still think the same way about abortion going forward? Because I think that's pretty much where, now that Roe versus Wade is gone, I think this is where the debate is going to pick up in pace.
Yeah, because one thing I kind of noticed is that we're kind of conflating a fetus as the same thing as like a human being. Like we're pretty much kind of almost assuming that a fetus is like a human life almost, right? I think, or especially Debatebore is kind of assuming that, which I mean I don't necessarily think so, and I'll probably say that some people here probably don't think so as well. So I think we should probably
Wait,
establish.
assuming what? I'm sorry, I misunderstood. What am I assuming?
I
That
think he's trying to say life can start at conception,
yeah,
or that a fetus is a life. Yeah, I mean, I'll be on that hill. You can lump me in there. Yeah, I think it starts at conception.
yeah, but
I think I also agree with that as well.
But I mean, I wouldn't necessarily say that it's also the same as a human life, right? Like, I don't think it has as much value as a, like a normal, like adult human being, right? Um, I think that's probably what they
That's
should debate on.
debatable.
Yeah,
I think it's like context. I know. I thought of my child as a human from very first. Well, not when I first learned I was pregnant, but definitely when I saw the ultrasound.
yeah, but I mean, I don't think it is worthy to have the same rights as a human, right?
I think
Until
it should warrant more protection. I think that a vulnerable life like that warrants more protection.
Yeah.
So do you think then that also, like, a vulnerable life, in this case, like an unborn, like, set of cells, deserves, like, childcare? Like men should have to start paying parental support, like, at the point of conception, and correspondingly be back due. Like, women should be back due all of the money once parental, like, is it like
once
parental rights are
parenthood has been
established?
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, is that cool too?
The cases that I've known of, they haven't actually. Well, they were married cases. They didn't grant divorces until the child was born. Other cases, I don't think they established it before the child was born, but it was from the time the child was born. So I mean,
then that doesn't really make sense to me then, right? Because, like, if life's beginning there, then, like, I don't know, it just doesn't logically follow.
Well, I mean,
like,
I think what he or she is saying
can I
is that
can I sue an unborn child for ruining my life and my body?
That makes absolutely no sense at all.
I mean,
why not? Why not? They're complete beings, right?
Then you should
they don't have
kept
any
your zipper
assets.
closed.
Yeah,
Don't have any
yeah.
ass to take.
I'm just going.
Like,
I'm just going to keep it
Well,
real.
well, I
You
guess
should
you
have kept your zipper closed.
because we live in America. You can sue a ham sandwich. Doesn't mean you win, but you could file the paperwork and they'll and it'll be filed. So I
You
mean,
can't
yeah,
fix a subpoena.
well, yeah, if you find the mother and just slap the papers against the tummy, you,
like,
you
and
can do
then,
it.
but okay. So, and what happens if the baby kills the mother? Should the baby be charged with murder?
If it's intentional, which I don't
Oh,
I
this
think
is
mean,
all
okay,
so
so we'll
silly,
just
guys.
say,
Guys,
we'll
this is
just
so
say
so
Just
silly
it's
to be
ad
having this kind
absurdum.
of conversation. This kind of conversation doesn't actually add any insight. It doesn't enlighten us to anything about whether or not a right to abortion exists in any of our
Well,
founding
no.
documents
well, the
or in
problem.
state
No,
So, like,
constitutions.
all right,
It doesn't actually help us understand the legal reasoning behind Roe in the
pointing out
first
the
place or Dobbs
absurdity of your
now. I mean,
position, like patently,
no,
it's
see,
fucking
you guys are
absurd.
trying to go down this ridiculous hypothetical path where,
No, so
oh my
all right,
goodness,
here's
if
the
we
problem.
nitpick far enough, we're going to identify some absurdity or some hypocrisy,
The
as
only
though that
reason
wins something, and it doesn't win
the
anything.
only
It's just
reason
silliness.
the only reason that privacy was used was because people were going and asking doctors, and the like medical privilege and privacy that corresponds from it have been like been ways that people would find out about abortion. It's not that it tacitly allows abortion. It's that women had the right to conceal their medical records, to prevent that from being open. And it actually, I think, is kind of like part of the fifth, because it's like it gives you the ability to not self-incriminate by like having the privacy of your doctor's records. But like to sit here and like make the suggestion that women shouldn't have like the choice over what happens to their body because you don't feel it's cool, or you have some like fucking sky daddy that like gives you like commands from on high and
See, that's
telling
as soon as
other
someone
people
invokes
what to
Sky
do
Daddy, you
with
know they're
their
not serious. They're
bodies.
not rational in this conversation.
Well,
All they're looking
no,
for is cheap,
I mean,
Or to think
rhetorical
that a
points.
woman, or to think
it
that a
could
woman
be.
doesn't have agency to say, no, I don't want to have sex with someone who's I'm not married to and going to support me and my child when I get pregnant.
I live in Texas, and our governor said that he was going to end rape. Like, there shouldn't be a problem anymore, right? It's cool.
Well,
Hey, that's
not
a
it.
great goal. I don't know
I'd
why
love
you'd
to
hammer
see
him on
that
it.
quote.
Okay, so I'll. You want to jump
That
in,
has
then we'll
nothing
go
to
to
do with
Aiko,
Roe versus Wade.
And
Yeah, because
and
I was
then
I was entertaining that scenario of like should people be sued, some should paperwork be filed or whatnot, because I was trying to get down to it and just entertaining it, because I think at the end of the day I think it's kind of like society is like um putting women on a pedestal a little bit, like benevolent sexism, because I think that women, having the right to choose whether to abort their responsibilities for the creation and rearing of a child. But, a father couldn't do that. Your father can't say, oh, as a child, but I don't want anything to do with it. I'm just gonna abort my financial responsibilities. I'm not gonna pay child support. Don't try and look for me, government. Don't try and look for me, court. I can't do this. I'm gonna hide my financial records so you can't use that. Like so it's not, it's kind of a double standard how like, so I think that if one should be okay, then I think the other should be okay. I think that's something else that's true.
let's go to Aiko, then Coffee, and then Doobie. He hasn't had a chance to speak.
Yeah, I just wanted to say I actually agree with Debatebore that we shouldn't sort of get off track with a lot of these gotchas and we should stay a little bit more good faith. But also, I think that something else Debateboy said was that let's stop talking about whether we should have a right to abortion, and because that has nothing to do with the constitutional arguments that he's making or what we are supposed to be talking about on panel. But I'm looking at the prompt now that says really we should be talking about what should we do now, which means probably are we codifying Roe in Congress? Are we going to create some sort of new right in Congress, which we can do statutorily? Rights don't just come from the Constitution. And none of us are talking about that right now. I'm thinking maybe we should steer the conversation a little bit towards what we should do now, which is I think whether or not we should have a right for abortion then becomes relevant to this discussion if that's the prompt.
So
Okay.
can I interject real
Yeah,
quick?
please.
Go ahead, please.
So like my problem with it is like there's nothing that limits a man in this same way that women have this like arbitrary restriction placed upon them where they don't get to have like complete control over their bodies. And like it's weird to me that we should have to legislate giving somebody control over themselves. And I find it really sketchy that like we're having to affirm these rights in this way, if that makes sense. And I think that that's why I have such like big knee jerk reactions to this, is because in my mind, like fundamentally, this is just like an individual's right. Like if you don't want something happening in your body, if you don't want cancer growing in your body, like you can get it cut out. Cool, right? If you want to like get a vasectomy, no problem. But women don't get these same like fundamental basic rights. Like even in a lot of cases, like doctors won't even allow women to get like tubal ligations until like well into their 30s, and like or they need like a spouse's approval in some instances. Like it's ridiculous. I don't know.
Can I go?
Before that, I think the paper wanted to respond to this point. Then we'll go to you, Coffee, and then Doobie.
Just real quick, these appeals to bodily autonomy, this appeal to a universal, unlimited right to control your own body, it simply doesn't exist outside of abortion. So I don't understand the basis for this appeal. Right?
What do you mean it doesn't exist?
We have
Like,
a wide
what
variety of
surgeries are you not allowed to get?
We have a wide variety of instances where an individual can be deprived of their life. They can be incarcerated in jail. They can be remitted or remanded, not remanded. They can be placed by the state in a mental institution. They can be deprived of a variety of other privileges of life, like owning a firearm, where there's no there isn't any universal control over your body that's enshrined anywhere. So I'm not sure what the basis is for this, where it comes from, and why we have this belief.
Okay, so you're talking about people being imprisoned, people having like rights taken away from them because of something that they've done that was like literally against the law, and a person not being able to have a voluntary medical procedure. Those are the comparisons that you want to bring.
These are not comparisons.
Those are comparisons. That's exactly
no,
what you're doing.
You are misunderstanding what a comparison is. I am citing for you
in this scenario
specific instances
that
where somebody
people
does
are
not have
having
complete
bodily
control over
autonomy,
their body.
Examples
but you're
are
not interested in listening to that. You want to pull you're comparing a fetus to COVID type nonsense. No, I've cited specific instances to you in which people's bodily control is trumped by the state. Therefore, an unlimited right to abortion, a right to abortion, does not follow from this appeal to bodily control or bodily autonomy.
You compared imprisonment. You compared people losing rights for violating laws.
Not to specified specific instances where people
you
are
deprived. These are other scenarios where people don't have bodily autonomy. Oh, and here's just another one. And where that other one is people getting voluntary medical procedures.
Let's let in
voluntary medical procedures. I'm sorry.
An abortion is a voluntary medical procedure.
Let's let in coffee politics, then Doobie.
Yeah, so I mean, my problem with the Debatebore is that you're trying to. So basically, you said that a fetus should have uh, the right for protection, or they should be protected from the state, right? Um, but like I personally believe that, and I think you probably would say that because like they're a human life and all that. But I mean, I personally wouldn't say that they necessarily even need it. I mean, or my opinion would be that they're not necessarily human life, so they don't really need that protection, right? Sure, they are life, but doesn't necessarily grant them protection from being killed or being aborted, whatever. I can think of like many lives that are being killed, non-human lives that are being killed, and people usually don't have a problem with that. So
Roe sidesteps the question of personhood for the fetus intentionally.
yeah,
That's why it goes
exactly.
to privacy, was so that they wouldn't have to decide when life begins, which because it's such a difficult, fraught question.
And I
Let's
think
go.
that's going to be the debate moving forward.
Let's go,
Yeah,
Dooby.
maybe we can't avoid it now.
I don't think it's a debate. That's a debate. People on the right side of this argument can win, to be honest with you, because most of the personhood stuff, they're humans at conception sort of thing, and then using that to justify restricting abortion rights. Most of that is like religious, typically, right? And I don't think with most of these people, you're going to argue them out of their religious beliefs to get them to be okay with abortion.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure how to even like approach that. Yeah, because I think even if it's not religious, I mean, you could acknowledge that, hey, yeah, this is a human being, right? Being formed here in the womb, but it's okay to kill it anyway, right? Sometimes it's okay to kill, to end lives, right? I think we're okay with that as a society in some cases. This is one, right? So like, but that seems scary to a lot of people who are like pro-life, quote unquote, right? So I'm not sure like how to even fix this, to be honest with you. But I was thinking like Prime, like your no compromise strategy, I think is a really bad one because of this, right? Because you have people that have like religious convictions that you're not going to debate them out of. It sounds rude, but they're not really rooted in logic anyway. Right? They're going to believe that these little babies have souls in there, even though they look like a clump of cells or whatever the fuck. And because if they have a soul, God them wants to be born. And if you kill them, it's murder and yada yada yada. Right? So like I don't know how effective the no compromise thing is going to be with these people.
Well, how is
Yeah.
it effective to compromise with them in that case, right? If they believe that these babies have souls and they have souls from the moment they're conceived, right? They don't
Yeah.
start having souls up to 6 weeks, right? So instead
Yeah.
of pussyfooting around with these people, we fight them tooth and nail. We say like this is a right. This is something that people must be able to not access, but like the care must be guaranteed. Otherwise, like we end up in a situation that we're in now, right, where we spend years compromising. Like this, like where we are now is the result of years compromising and saying that, well, sure, we like abortion rights, please, but I guess we'll restrict this in this way or that way, and it just keeps adding up. They keep coming back to the trough. They keep
Prime.
restricting. Yeah.
I
Okay,
don't
but
think that's
Prime, hasn't there been 50 years where if it was that big of a deal, something could have been done?
You mean from the Democratic side, like enacting it into law? Is that what you mean?
Yeah, or some sort of
Yeah.
compromise or something.
Yes. If you're talking about democratic failures, as I was saying before earlier in the stream, not sure if you were there for that. There are plenty of failure to go around from Democratic politicians, including President Obama,
Yes,
who had the chance to do so. Absolutely,
that's
it
right.
was a big deal, and he didn't do it, and he deserves blame for this.
wait.
Absolutely.
What
So,
did
I'll
he
say
not
something
do?
about this because you talked about the 60, the filibuster proof majority that the Democrats had for all of 60 days, was it, until Kennedy died? There was less than 2 months when they had that supermajority.
and they had
Lieberman was in the
59
mix.
afterwards.
You 59 afterwards, but it takes 60, right? To get it
Yeah,
passed.
but
You can't say they had a filibuster-proof majority, especially when
sure.
one of the 60 or 59 was Lieberman, who was always undercutting what the Democrats were doing. He was the Joe Manchin of his day, possibly
Yeah,
really worse than Joe Manchin.
I
And at
go.
the same time, they couldn't even defeat the Stupak Amendment on passing Obamacare in 2009. And for them to halt the work on that in order to codify Roe, you wouldn't have had Obamacare. So the question is, if you could trade this decision, losing Roe, uh, and honestly, I think we'd lose it anyway. They would have struck down Roe codification as well. But if let's say theoretically you couldn't, would you trade Obamacare for avoiding this decision, or for a shot
Actually,
at avoiding this decision?
so the shitty Obamacare actually I might actually do that. So I remember the fight. I remember
Yeah.
what happened. And you are correct in terms of like what's his face died. Kennedy died. And then we had 59 senators, and then we had people who would be wavering on that. No, you're absolutely right. I guess maybe I implied the fight would be easier than it would have been, which fair enough. But when it comes to Obamacare was like the way President Obama, quote unquote, fought that is to beg for Republican votes. Like it took as long as it did because Obama was on his hands and his knees asking for Republicans to vote for this, right? And Republicans do not like these provisions, right? That will lower the cost of healthcare. Well, let's cut these things out for you, Republicans.
Yeah.
Please, will you vote for it? No. Well, let's keep cutting and cutting, right? And then we finally took it to the House floor, right? And after those Republicans got all those concessions, they didn't fucking vote for it.
Yeah.
So that's why that
What
happened.
else? What
It
else
was
is
all about
Obama
one
supposed to
person.
do?
It was all
Right.
about getting to
Yeah.
60 for cloture, so that they could then vote
Well,
against it, and it would
doesn't
still pass.
doesn't Obama need those
Wait, I
Republican
think
votes anyway? Right? Like I think he would have to make a concession with them.
Yeah, you had no choice. It was that
Yeah.
or not. It wouldn't pass.
Wait, but I think this like
But they
misses
did.
the point because this isn't really that clearly like a Republican versus Democrat issue, right? There are plenty of Democrats who are anti-abortion. In fact, you were saying, hey, we've been compromising for 50 years.
Louisiana.
When Roe v. Wade was decided, half the country, including many Democrats, were totally opposed to abortion in all cases, right? So there's been plenty of compromise on the other end of their argument too. But even today, it's only like a slim majority of Democrats would favor abortion, like in any case, right? Most of them still want restrictions on abortion, and the same goes for Republicans. Most of them are for abortion in certain cases, but and very few are for it with like no restrictions whatsoever, right? So this isn't like clearly Republican versus Democrats. This is even like Democrats versus other Democrats. I think you need to compromise in a democracy when this is the case. Right? It's not just clear cut, left versus right.
But of course, Roe was the compromise, right? Because it was legal in all cases for first trimester, a more complicated process for second trimester, and then pretty much an outright ban in the third trimester.
Yeah.
That's what Roe was. It was the compromise.
Yeah, but so the compromise was both sides compromising, not just the
Yes.
progressive side.
Well, wait. How is Roe a compromise when the court literally took from the correct political space the public policy issue of abortion? The court was completely arbitrary in that action. There's no compromise there. They literally just took the issue and attempted to resolve it, and they actually didn't resolve it.
It was an intentional
that-
compromise forced by lawyers. It was selected.
What?
There was
No, no, but
compromise.
I think that this
Abortion is an
Compromise in
Christ.
terms
Yeah.
of when
Abortion
the
is-
line was. They set it at 24 weeks. After that, you
Promise.
can't do it. Before that, you can.
Promise, go ahead.
That's the compromise.
Abortion is a medical procedure that people choose to get. The thing here, and this is what Roe did, is it gave women the right to privacy over their own medical health care. It prevented the state and others from being able to look in on it and then to try and go after and demonize women for having a safe medical procedure. It's not a random assertion that's given it. It's saying that, hey, if you're getting a medical procedure, it's nobody's business but your own because it's your body. It's a medical procedure and it's the privacy. It's not a random conflation. It's not putting policy anywhere. It's saying, hey, this is your right.
That doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, I wouldn't agree with
I
that.
think
Exactly.
most people would say, So first off, I think that there's something to be said about the Supreme Court taking this fight out of the hands of the states, right? I think there's a good argument that it should have been left in the states, and we should have had to fight over this from state to state, like they were doing with gay marriage before the Supreme Court cut that fight short too. Right? I think that there's something to be said there for that. But I think most of us here, I think most people would agree that there's some medical procedures that even though it's between the doctor and the patient, we should have regulations or restrictions as to which medical procedures a doctor can give a patient, right? So like if you have somebody who has like a serious mental health issue and they're trying to go in and get plastic surgery all the time, most people say, hey, this plastic surgeon shouldn't do this every time this person with a mental health issue wants this plastic surgery, right? And they'd want the government involved to stop that because they'd consider it a form of abuse, right? So I don't think it makes sense to say just because it's a medical procedure, there's no right to regulate it.
I don't think anybody who's ever read Roe has concluded that, any serious person has concluded that Roe established some right to medical privacy. No, Roe explicitly memorialized a federal permissive right to abortion. All right, and not this nonsense about privacy of medical information or right to pursue a healthy medical procedure at all. No, this explicitly strong-armed the nation into permitting abortion, and along with the companion cases in Doe and Casey, then further enacted further restrictions on the state's ability to restrict abortion in any instance, and where we ended up prior to this week.
How do you enforce that if there's privacy rights? If you have the right to privacy, it can't be enforced because there'd be no way for the state to find out that you've had the procedure. You specifically have to, I don't want to say violate if it's in dispute whether the right exists, but you have to dismiss the privacy of the patient in order to enforce this thing.
Yep.
That is to say, it can be technically illegal, but you could never enforce it.
Is there such a right or amendment that specifically gives you medical privacy? I know there are federal laws, but just because they're federal laws, they're not make them laws.
Roe did, but it got struck down. Yeah, so I mean that right no longer exists. But up until this decision, it did.
Yeah, because I know there's HIPAA laws where you can keep medical things between your doctors.
HIPAA is about medical records. Yeah.
Yeah, confidentiality, but that's a federal law. That's not necessarily a right that you have. That's just
now. If you used HIPAA the way the anti-maskers wanted to use HIPAA, then yeah, you could have an abortion because it would be illegal for the state to even say, "Hey, did you just have a procedure that we don't like?" If you used HIPAA in that way, but of course, HIPAA only covers documents.
Okay.
So I wanted
the
to
due
let in.
process is. It's the 14th Amendment and due process.
I wanted to let in our friend Chinchilla, who I haven't seen in forever. Chinchilla, I've missed you, buddy.
I'm sorry, man.
No need to apologize, but I'm just happy that you're here. Hope you're doing well.
I'm doing well. First of all, subscribe to Prime. That's the first thing I just want to say, because of the fact that he is putting up with all these bozos that come here, and they talk and they debate, including me. That being said, overall, when it comes on this topic, right? It's I'm on the left as well, right? So, but it's Democrats clearly lost something around abortion rights, and we need to accept that as well, in the sense that it's more a state affiliated thing. And I feel a lot of more democratic leaning people are saying well, it's we can still do this federal, maybe in the future, right? But not right now. And I feel a lot of Democrats are trying to to say this is a still a federal thing, which is not, because it's clear that it's more a state thing at this point.
Wait, I've got to respond to that because if you read the decision itself, it says the final concluding portion of the opinion says, "We therefore hold that the Constitution does not confer a right to abortion. Roe and Casey must be overruled, and the authority to regulate abortion must be returned to the people and their elected representatives." That implies that Congress those are the elected representatives, can codify Roe or
Well, they
create
can
some
do.
other right to abortion, and then it implies that this SCOTUS would not overrule that because it's a right to regulate abortion belongs to the elected representatives. It's the very final sentence in this decision.
Yeah, it doesn't necessarily say that there is no jurisdiction, right? But it
Right.
does say that
It affirms that
like
there is
a bit, well, I wouldn't go that far. That's just basically like speculation. But it's like I would say like overall, it's more like throwing it back to the states. And if like the US, like the federal like government wants to regulate that in the future, that could be the possibility. But but right now we lost, right? And we gotta make sure. And this is the thing that I think that is really important. Like overall, like we gotta make sure that that like basically like within states, right, that abortion is protected, even in like more redder states and that kind of shit. But yeah, hard as it is, but yeah, there you go.
Yeah, I mean, I think it would be a really good point to argue that why someone having the right to abortion, why that should be a federal issue rather than a state issue, right? I think that would be a good thing to argue on. If
What
anybody,
would you argue?
well, I mean, of course, I mean, I would argue that it should be a state issue, but Aiko, I'm kind of wondering why do you think it should be like a federal issue?
Well, it doesn't specify who the elected representatives are that have this authority, but there's no question that Congress consists of elected representatives. Now, of course, there's also state legislatures as well. That implies to me that you can do this either way, that any elected representatives have the authority to create some sort of law that regulates abortion, right? That's the language of the decision. And so now
Just a
it's
quick
gonna
question
have-
here.
Yeah.
Aiko, what were you referring to in the decision itself as the basis for your guys' sidebar here?
It's the final two sentences, well, the final sentence, I guess.
Is it part of the syllabus or part of the opinion part?
Part of the opinion.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, it's the final one.
The
It's
majority
sentence
opinion?
starting with Roe and Casey must be overruled.
Okay.
Is this the
If you search
majority
for that,
opinion, or
you'll
is
find
By the way, for the record, I think that like abortion should be like a federal issue. Like I live in the Netherlands, right? We just have like rules, like social rules
Oh.
about like certain stuff, and I think it's like super weird if you just have like certain like territories within like your own nation where they can do like certain like social stuff. Well, in other territories they cannot do that. I think that's super weird. And I think that overall, just imagine like people in like in fucking like North Dakota not being able to get like abortion and then going to South Dakota to get an abortion. It doesn't make any sense whatsoever. What is your country? Like, can you not cannot can you guys not decide on that one? You know, it's like that's the thing about having a country to decide on those things. You know,
Well, I
It's-
mean, that's just
I think
how
it's pretty weird.
that's just how United States
I think
works, right? Like,
yeah,
like,
we're a constitutional republic, so we have different.
Yeah,
states
I
that want
understand.
different things.
I
And,
understand, but I think I think it's pretty confusing when you have like something like abortion, which is like a pretty big thing, right? And if you
but it's
can
not the only
just
big
basically if you can basically just go 50 miles or 50 kilometers up north or south or east or west, and then basically avoid that thing that you right, it doesn't make any sense. So you gotta pretty much like better make that a federal thing, right?
Well,
I don't know how to.
There's different things for different.
You go
I
first,
was, I was,
Fred.
yeah, I was gonna say that, well, there's different things where this also applies, like immigration laws. Some are like incredibly lax when it comes to immigration. Some are incredibly strict when it comes to immigration. Marijuana, some have it legal, but federally it's like Schedule 5. Like they will like knock down your doors with like the wrath of
Mhm.
God in certain places with weed dispensaries. So I mean, having
All
abortion being
right.
one of the list of where there's different policies depending on state lines, it's like it'll just be one more thing that's like, from different states. Like gun laws are another thing. So I mean,
Mhm.
it's like
Yeah.
it should be a state issue because I
I have
think
a comment on
different
Aiko's point.
policies have things.
So,
Okay.
Aiko, that point that you were talking about at the end of the opinion, I think is really clear. It says the Constitution does not prohibit the citizens of each state from regulating or prohibiting abortion. Right? The
Yeah,
court
that's
doesn't
right.
see any authority conferred from the Constitution to the court or the federal government to
Wait.
disallow.
Those are two different questions.
Right?
It sounded like you repeated what you said at the beginning, but you actually said two very different things.
I was just reversing it. Right? That the Constitution doesn't disallow the states from regulating abortion.
That is correct. Yeah, the
Right. Okay.
Constitution does not. But the
Right.
question here is, can they be statutorily stopped? Right? Can
Right. Now it
Congress
says
pass a law?
Right. It says we now overrule those decisions and return that authority
Yes.
to the people and their elected representatives. So,
But they're overruling courts. They're not overruling a previous congressional action.
no. See, okay, if it says the Constitution does not prohibit the citizens from regulating or prohibiting abortion, what that means is that Congress can't step in and suddenly enact
No.
via,
It doesn't
via
mean that. It means
statute.
that no. It doesn't mean that. It means that Congress, it means that the Constitution, as it's worded, doesn't stop the states. But nowhere does it say that you can't pass a statutory law that would do something like
Well,
that.
wait a second.
You can establish
Congress,
rights by statute too. They just rights established by statute
okay.
have less force than those in the Constitution.
Well, I would
But
agree
you
with
can
that,
still
but
do that.
where does if the Constitution, right,
Right.
doesn't prohibit the citizens, then from where does Congress derive the authority to prohibit citizens or the states from regulating abortion? Where does Congress derive that authority from then?
Yeah, we're gonna have to see. We're gonna have to see because whatever Congress does is going to go back to the courts, and then the courts will answer that question. But it clearly says here that the authority to regulate abortion must be returned to the people and their elected representatives. So
I would
Congress,
say, to me, it clearly means the states' elected representatives.
doesn't say that.
Well,
Why did he not
okay.
add the word states? Why did he leave that ambiguous?
Because it clearly
Alito's
states your
not dumb.
Constitution. Well, no, Constitution does not prohibit the citizens. That means Congress can't act here because the Constitution doesn't give Congress the ability to act. Therefore, the
No.
only elected representatives left are the states' elected
But it doesn't
representatives.
say. It doesn't say. It says the Constitution doesn't stop the states. It says the
Say
case
it,
is
that's
not
why.
about. It doesn't have to say that because the case is not about that. This is about
No, it's exactly
banning
about
abortion
returning it to the
based on the
states.
force of. But here's
Can
what Roe
I
does.
can I say
Roe
something about
takes-
it?
Yeah, hold on just a second. Let me finish this. Roe goes to the Constitution and says, okay, we derive the right to privacy out of these three parts of the Constitution. And they pieced it together. This case says you can't do that. But it doesn't say anything about Congress not having the authority to give it a shot. And in fact, it says here, the elected representatives, and it doesn't limit it to the states. And it could have, which means that Congress has a right to take a shot at that.
Wait, so
No,
I
it
Maybe
doesn't.
it'll
It's
get
not
struck
the-
down later.
Hold on, Debatebore. I got you, brother. It's okay. I'm reading.
I was going to say,
a-
the Constitution sits above Congress. If it says the
What?
Constitution doesn't
This-
disallow the states from regulating abortion, that is inherently saying that Congress does not have a place to attempt to stop the states from regulating abortion.
It doesn't say
Because
that.
otherwise,
Right.
Congress would be
Well-
because to put Congress in here, right, would be to suggest that Congress can, outside the scope of what's enumerated via the Constitution, can act on its own accord, and the court isn't going to do that. That's why Congress isn't mentioned here.
So
I think that this is an important. This is
let's learn Spaniard and crystal clear, okay? We haven't
All right,
answered-
so I'm going to read something from the Supreme Court, the PDF that's actually on this case, writ of the United States Court of Appeals
Someone
for the
muted.
Fifth Court, okay? And me? So it's like the second paragraph. It says, for the first 185 years after the adoption of the Constitution, each state was permitted to address this issue in accordance with the views of the citizens. And then in 1973, this court decided Roe v. Wade 410 U.S. 113. Even though the Constitution makes no mention of abortion, the court held that it confers a broad right to obtain one. It did not claim that American law or the common law have ever recognized such a right, and its survey of history ranged from the Constitution irrelevant. So that plainly states exactly what Debatebore is stating.
It just says that, yeah, but it's talking about the Constitution as regards the claim that was being made in Roe. It doesn't say anything about Congress. I agree that Congress would have to.
No, it's leaving it up to the state, though.
I would agree that Congress would have to craft a law in a way that that appeals to authorizations of power granted by the Constitution. It's going to have to do that. But in this decision does not rule out the possibility that it can.
Yeah.
It doesn't agree with
serious
piecing together a right to privacy. It doesn't agree with
serious
especially
question. Please,
substantive
I'm begging
process. I'm sorry?
Who cares? Who gives a fuck? Right? I don't think that people that are supporting Roe or against Roe or pro-abortion or like against abortion are hinging their disagreements upon what the Constitution says. I think it's a much deeper disagreement than that. Right. So like, I don't think saying, oh, well, it says this here in the Constitution and then fighting over like particular phrases there or in the ruling itself is going to get anyone any further on this issue. Like, I don't think it literally doesn't matter.
Except that it always matters when you're in front of the Supreme Court.
But we're not. We're discussing.
No, I don't think it does.
Ultimately, anything that gets done, I mean, again, this panel is supposed to talk about what do we do now. And one of the things we have to do is craft some sort of legislation that the Supreme Court will allow. And that's where parsing those phrases matters.
So you think
Dooby, I would disagree because it would matter to me greatly, right? If Congress attempted to legislate here, right, I would be totally opposed to it because I don't believe Congress has any authority to do so. On the other hand, moving forward, if people wanted to organize an attempt to amend the Constitution, that would be important to me. That would have greater validity, that would have greater reliability, and it would have greater stability associated with it. Even if I didn't agree with what actually came about from that amendment process,
yeah, but if they
it
came
would be more
forward
important
with
to
an
me.
amendment to the Constitution that supported abortion, you'd be opposed to it because your disagreement with abortion rights is much deeper than what's on paper in the Constitution.
No, right, but it would be a process. It would be a process that we would understand and would have a hard time taking effort with.
You don't understand the process of how laws are made?
It sounds to me that Debatebore cares more about the process than he does about abortion per se.
No, it's that I can actually tolerate a constitutional amendment that creates a right to abortion. I can tolerate that more so than I can tolerate an egregious judicial error like Roe or the Congress acting where it has no authority to act. Right? I would actually respect the constitutional amendment and I would live with it. Right? I would probably work to try to reverse it or to re-amend.
Is that because to amend the Constitution itself, you'd need like a much stronger, what's the word I'm looking for? Expression of like
voice of the people. Yeah, I think so. I think it would be unlikely to happen, which is why that's the way I feel it should have been handled.
So I mean, I have such a big problem with this because now you're saying like we need a line on the Constitution that says, "Oh, women have rights." Black people have rights, like minorities have rights. Like, is this the most like?
That's kind of some gymnastics.
Well, I guess we're good then with getting rid of the 14th Amendment. It wasn't needed, right? Because we just all accepted that everyone has every right.
Literally, right? That's what.
Well, I think
Roe
the
was
problem
tried
is
under
that
the 14th Amendment.
I think the problem is that it wouldn't, whether or not women have rights or not, doesn't necessarily matter on abortion because, and I'm assuming this is what Debatebore would argue, but like he would probably think that it's a human life, so it doesn't necessarily matter whose right it is. You should protect a human life before anyone else, and that's what we're
Yeah.
arguing
Amen. And
on.
let me go back. Prime had given me a time that I was going to speak, and then Dooby
Please.
went, and I agreed with him. And Spaniard, I love that you read right from it, because that's where I was thinking that this conversation actually was a good, interesting place for the panel to go. More topics. I think also what I at least I myself, and I think maybe debate we're also were saying is that the decision should be either the amendment, that whole process is known, or it goes back to your community and your state where you have more of a say so in the laws that are passed in your community. So that's the other part of why I think it would go back to the states.
Well, if we do go back to the states, let me just say this. There might be a more limited protection that can come from Congress that comes through the Interstate Commerce Clause. And that is to say, they're already building a kind of underground railroad for women who need these services. And they're already starting to try to pass laws in states that say you're not allowed to leave the state in order to get an abortion, sort of modeled on other laws with regards to crossing state lines for immoral purposes and things like that. One might use the Interstate Commerce Clause to say, well, if you're going to cross state, you have the right to cross state lines. And if you do that, then it doesn't fix the problem entirely. But if you have these organizations that can, there's already an organization in Texas that gets people to Oklahoma, or it did until this thing passed, and now it's going to have to move to New Mexico. Where it gets women over there to have their services and come back. And at some point, already in Texas law, they can be sued for leaving the state, getting an abortion, and coming back if somebody notices that it's happened. But there'll probably be more specific laws saying that it is absolutely illegal to leave the state in order to get this service. And that's one of the what do we do next questions is can we use the Interstate Commerce Clause to at least say if you're going to cross state lines, you have the right to do that?
Let's
Yeah,
go
but
to Dooby and then I'll.
Yeah, I'm kind of curious. So Debatebore, one of the things that Clarence Thomas, well, two of them that he pointed to, right, in his opinion, were that they might go, or he's suggesting that this could be that they should go after like contraceptive rights and like gay marriage, I think it was, after this, like going forward. So those things are also things that are like heavily contested by conservatives because they kind of found rights that didn't really exist in the Constitution, but found some way to craft them. Would you be in favor of the Supreme Court overturning those things too, and sending that back to the states?
And sending it back to the states, I'm not sure. So, again,
And
like the right to
further, I'm going to
abortion.
ask you
Go ahead.
one question further, because the Civil Rights Act has also been floated, not by the Supreme Court, I think by like a couple of representatives. It's not like a huge like movement, but this is something that I've used to argue against the Civil Rights Act before, right? Because I do think it should be overturned because I'm much smarter than you guys. But so would you support that being overturned too?
That I don't know. I haven't thought. I haven't even thought along those lines. I would suggest that anything connected to the right to privacy is probably up for grabs now, and rightfully ought to be, because again, the court arbitrarily grabbed for itself a space to divine rights, literally from thin air. I mean, literally, they called it penumbras. Really means the shadows. So in the space around the first 8 amendments, apparently we can divine now all sorts of rights that our founders just simply couldn't imagine on their own, like a right to privacy, which was a function of their debates at the time, but yet interestingly wasn't codified into the Constitution or the original Bill of Rights. So those things should be up for grabs. And from there, then, is a question of, well, who has authority then to act in those spaces?
Isn't it kind of awkward that you're like appealing to the founders though in this?
No.
Like, why is it not?
Well, why do you think it's awkward?
These are like people that lived like 200 years ago that couldn't imagine a dishwasher and owned people.
You think
Like,
the existence of a dishwasher
these
somehow
are the
changes what
best
rights ought to be?
arbiters of our like modern world that
No,
we
no,
live
no. Well,
in.
that's a you problem. You
No, it's
and people
no,
like
that's a
wait,
pretty.
listen. I'm not trying to slam you. You
We're
and people who
cool
think
with
like
other
you
people.
think
That's
that the
cool.
Constitution exists for you to grab things that you like. And that's not the case at all. You can use the wait.
Let him respond. Let him respond. Hey, let him respond.
Wait. You should be using the correct political processes, whether that is in Congress, whether that is in your state legislatures, whether that is at your local municipal government level or county government level. But to abuse the Constitution as we have for the last 50 years, right, as a sort of grab bag to use the justices, right, to invent rights so they can placate specific people or groups of people in our population is just the wrong way. It lacks legitimacy. It lacks validity. It doesn't resolve anything at all. It creates what Roe created, 50 years of upheaval throughout our political processes.
More than that, actually, when you look at everything that the 14th has touched. Like, you're talking about overturning metric shit tons of people's lives, not just, like, your ability to control women. Like,
I don't know if they can't use a dishwasher.
Yeah.
I guess it's my goodness.
Well, he's saying
Let
that.
me let Island was waiting, right? And then we'll go to Dooby, Coffee, and then Aiko.
Yeah. So, you know, something going back to what I was saying before about like these fundamental differences. I think at some point, we have to really recognize and deal with the fact that as a country we're so like divided on these culture war issues that it's very unlikely that we'll ever get any resolution on many of these hot button topics that are cleaving us apart. um and I think that one of these things is like, when do we give like human rights and civil rights to humans? Like that's going to be I guess the secular equivalent to when does life begin? Because religious people would say life begins at conception. Some people who are secular would say it begins like when you're born. But I think beyond that, I think the second question that we're gonna run into is like, when do people get their human rights? When do they when do they get their civil rights? When are they allowed to have that right to life and liberty and the pursuit of happiness? I think.
Can I just ask a question?
Yeah, inshallah.
Yeah,
Chicho, I meant to say that you were next. I think I said Dooby, but yeah.
Yeah. Oh man, you confused me with Dooby.
You look the same.
Oh, go fuck yourself. No, just kidding. I like Dooby as well, so it doesn't matter. Like, people would like Dooby, but Dooby is like a character. He debates a lot, but yeah, and he's a fun dude. But it's like, I was just wondering, the last speaker, like Alice of Isles, if I say that correctly. Like, basically, I'm just wondering if you have like a country where nobody agrees on social issues and that kind of stuff, right? And because you are alluding to that and saying like, well, people don't agree. Why should you do that? Should you keep the country together just for economical stuff and that kind of stuff? Or should you say like, oh well, people don't agree on the social stuff, and we should make it more like disintegrated and that kind of stuff to have like more representation for their social stuff?
Yeah, I think like these type of matters that should be a little bit more decentralized in that matter, because like things like gun control, for example, there are people who really love guns and people who really hate guns, and so there's no way you're gonna have a federal policy on guns, quote unquote, that's gonna
Oh man,
Except that we do.
I just want to say this. You like everybody that living in the US is like talking about like these culture things and that kind of stuff. But you guys haven't been living there for like 200 years. You guys can make a country. You can make like a social stuff. You should be able to agree on that kind of stuff. It's like not like fucking Europe where we are all like fucking worrying each other for like whatsoever. You should be better. You should try to be
Yeah,
better. You know?
well, it's called having discourse and dialogue, and no one's saying that we shouldn't have
Yeah.
discourse and dialogue. But when you get to the basic course, there's going to be at times where some people really believe something and they are axiomatically for that thing and will not be able to change their minds because it goes against everything that they believe at
I
their
understand.
core. And
But
then,
I'll, I would
on the
I
other
would
side
suggest
is
this
right.
though, that I think people I would suggest that the pro-choice folks are absolutely against any sort of dialogue here. That's why we have these really weird appeals to a right to abortion or right to bodily autonomy or women's rights. Those appeals are intentioned or are intend to stop discussion. How could you be against women's rights or a right to abortion or right to bodily autonomy? Meanwhile, on the other side, folks like me, rational, ordinary folks like me, are saying that, look, overturning Roe is an opportunity to engage in democracy. Why don't you, on the other side, want to participate in that?
You
Wait, hold on.
so
But isn't
debate
the argument
board.
on the other side like, how could you murder babies? Like it's the same shit.
Yeah, and I agree, and that's why I think that
Which was an argument to overturn Roe.
Yeah, and that's why
Right?
I think
Okay, yeah.
that's why I preferred Roe being in place, because I think that sort of '90s compromise of safe, legal, rare was, I think, a compromise in that spirit, because it was like, okay, no one here wants to go back to the days of back alley coat hanger abortions. That's
What's
the
the issue with
safe
it
part,
not being
right?
rare?
Yeah.
Which weren't all that prevalent
What's
anyway.
the issue with it not being rare, right? So if you're okay with it being safe and legal, why does it need to be rare for you to be okay with it?
Because we don't want people just randomly, having abortions that aren't necessarily needed. Okay.
People
Hold
don't
on, but
do
who
that.
determines?
make it more
I'm glad to
fair.
hear that.
First off, who determines when it's needed? But the mother, right? By the person actually having the baby. I think we should leave it to her to determine when it's needed, when it's necessary. And further, that's extremely rare that people just get pregnancies and then they'll like abort them all the time, like three trimesters in or whatever. Typically, when you get into the second and third
Well,
trimester,
if it's so rare,
it's because there are
why do you
medical
need it
issues
to be
involved.
codified as a
But even
right
then-
that you have if it's so rare?
But because people like you and people like Debatebore would like to strip it entirely and say you can't get an abortion.
No,
Right?
actually,
They would
that's
say,
not
"Oh,
what
hey,
I've said.
You've
You can
been,
make
you've
that
been
up,
raped.
Dooby.
You've been raped,
No,
and,
Dooby, you can
and
make
now you're
that up.
pregnant.
Keep going
Well,
down this
fuck.
line.
Sorry, too bad. The
Yeah,
baby
we've
didn't
already
rape you,
said
so hey, you got to have the kid. You have
See,
to,
this
you have
is
to wait
that
9 months and have the
invention
kid.
part again. He's doing what the justices did in Roe and just inventing
No,
shit.
I'm telling you, there are plenty of people in
we've
the
never
pro
said
Of
that.
course, there are people, but not me.
Okay,
and
well,
not
this is what
Io.
I'm talking about. People, okay, I'm
Well,
sorry
talk
if I
about
put
them
you in that
then.
aisle.
Don't say you
I'm sorry if
and
I put you
Io.
in that aisle. I'm sorry
Okay,
if I
thank
put you in
you.
that aisle. Okay, I apologize to you, mister. But there are
Thank
people in the Christian conservative side, and even the Christian like Democrat side, right, who would say, hey, if you've been raped and you're pregnant, well, hey, the baby didn't rape you. It's not the baby's fault. So why would we murder the baby? So you shouldn't get an abortion. We should make it illegal for you to murder that child. Right. So this is why we need to have the right to abortion codified. We need to have it laid out specifically as a right for women.
So we're going to go to Coffee, then Aiko. But I'm going to respond to what Isle said. My answer is different from what Doobie just said. Is that do we need to codify? You're saying like, if it's so rare, then why do we need to codify it? Because otherwise, then people won't have it when they need it. So as Doobie correctly said, like women and within third trimester, like shit has gone down, right? It's an emergency. Like something is wrong with the baby, most likely, when that happens, right? And so in that case, I don't want any barriers for her getting care. And as it stands now, we have many barriers for getting care when that happens. It does happen every so often, but there are many barriers. And I also don't have a problem with let's say lowering that barriers, and then yeah, maybe there is some woman, you can find some woman who, after carrying a baby for 7 months, right, and doing the whole bonding thing with the baby that's been inside of her, right, just decides after waking up one day, I guess I'll kill the baby. I guess I'm done with this. Maybe you might find that right person. But even if you do, I'm okay with letting that person get an abortion so that all the other people who need it can get access to that care when they need it. Absolutely. So let's
So
go to a coffee and then Aiko.
Okay, well, so and maybe we'll be there fast this question, right? So debate board. So do you believe that a fetus is a human life, right? Is that what you believe?
I believe that a baby is a human life, a fetus, and I don't know why so many people hide behind the word fetus. A fetus is a stage of a baby's development.
Well, I'm talking about the baby that, usually people would argue that they should have the right to be aborted or they should be able to be aborted. That's why I'm calling it a fetus because
A
usually
baby is a human life.
yeah.
Yeah.
It is not.
Well,
Or
okay,
It
a
is
fetus.
not. Oh my God, embryology tells us it is. Let's not run away from the science here. You don't need to deny that what is in the womb is a human life to make your argument for a right to abortion.
Okay,
I
so
agree.
so in the
That's
beginning,
right.
I agree with
That's
that.
right.
It's
Sakes.
totally fine for it to be human life and still be okay with ending it. Yeah.
so in the
I
beginning,
agree.
Debatebor's right on that.
in the beginning of the panel, you also said that, well, okay, if the mom was raped, right? You can be able to abort that baby, right? Or like if there's other circumstances, you can be able to abort that baby. So why do you give the distinctions there if it's a human life, right? Like, shouldn't you just, if you're a human life, shouldn't you be protected at all costs unless you've done a harm or something, or you've done a cause?
Well, people can hold that opinion, and millions of people do. I don't. At some level, while I recognize that from conception there is a human life there, and that human life deserves the protection of the state, I see this as a sliding scale in which a state can intervene and can permit an abortion. That does not mean that I think there's a right to an abortion, that there's an entitlement to an abortion, but that does mean that I see there are specific instances or scenarios where the state has an interest in protecting the life of the baby, and that the state also has the right to, not the right, that the state has the authority to permit abortions in specific instances.
But if it's
I
a
think
if
to
it's a
that,
human life, then why wouldn't you not protect it at all costs, right? Like if somebody else got raped, I shouldn't be killed because of it, right? Like why you're making
This is because
I
I
got a
do.
question.
Because I
I got a
do,
question.
at some point, I
But
do
the
value that we
compromise.
do have a live human person who is carrying a baby and whose life is in jeopardy at that moment. I will weigh towards the mother in this
If
case.
I have a-
this shit were
I have a
actually
question.
about life,
Hold
it'd
on,
be
hold
like
on.
debate board.
So let's go to
I want is
Ike. Hold on, hold on,
what
hold on. One second, one second. We got Aiko's waiting one time. Then we'll go to you, Spaniard. Good.
Okay, so well, before I get to what I was about to say, I just want to say, because this has come up several times, the question of when does life begin, or whether it's human, or all that stuff. The fact is, there's 4 different questions when it comes to that threshold. So I've been involved in speech and debate high school tournaments for 35 years, and these questions always come up, and there's 4 of them. One of them is it alive, and at what point is it alive? The second question is whether it's human. And the third is
What's it, a crab?
yeah. Well, this is it. That's it exactly. That's it exactly. The third question is.
I'm sorry.
whether-
Go forward.
No.
I'm teasing.
The third question is personhood, and the fourth question is it a citizen? Can we confer American citizenship on it? And I think it seems to me that the first 2 questions are obvious. Yes, it's alive. It has cell division. It has all the properties of life that's required. If you were to look at any organism, you would say that it's alive if it had the same properties. So yes, it's alive. Yes, it's human because again, yes, it's not a rabbit. It's not some other species. It's alive and it's human. Question of personhood is an entirely different question. If someone goes into a coma, the old term for that used to be that you're a vegetable. Because the classical definition of an animal was a living organism that moves, and a vegetable doesn't move. So once you are in a coma, you're no longer, you're now considered a vegetable, right? But that's a euphemism. But really, it's a question of whether or not you still have personhood. Is there anything going on, in that brain of yours? And in the case of a zygote, for instance, there is no brain. In fact, in the case of a fetus for many, many weeks, there's no brain cells, nothing, no neurons, none of those pathways, nothing. So the question of whether it's a person, yeah, at that point it becomes a religious question. And then, of course, no one who's not a person can become a citizen. So the threshold there is even higher, I should think. But let me just say that what I was going to say before is that I'm Catholic. So a lot of this is our fault. We started this in the 50s and 60s and 70s. People looked at Catholics as weird because we
You didn't.
said that life begins at birth, and evangelicals didn't believe this stuff. They thought Catholics, in fact, growing up, everyone, I was Baptist growing up, and I'm Catholic now, thought that was sort of crazy until Lee Atwater realized that segregation and the race stuff wasn't working anymore and tried to create a new issue, and it was that. And in the 1980s, evangelicals just sort of flocked over to the Catholic position. But even Catholics didn't believe this forever. If you read Aquinas, he talks about something called the quickening. He says the soul doesn't enter the body until you feel the first kicking in the womb, which happens I think after 24 weeks. I'm not sure exactly when that line occurs. But for Aquinas, life does not begin at birth. And he's the doctor of the church. And in fact, there are passages in the Bible about bitter waters, which was what they took for abortion back then. So it's not really a biblical or religious thing until Lee Atwater makes it so. Very, very late in religious culture. So for 2,000 years, didn't even think about it. And then suddenly it becomes a religious issue. So I apologize as a Catholic. I apologize to everybody for messing that up. As a
You're not a real Catholic.
Yeah, I am because the church only requires that I believe abortion is a sin, which I do. But it doesn't mean that I believe that the state should force people to not sin in the eyes of the church, right? So
I've changed my mind. You are not a heathen.
I cannot myself get an abortion, and I would never advise anyone to get one unless they, there were certain overriding circumstances.
Don't be a bigot. Some men can't get abortions, okay?
Yes. No, you're right. You're right.
Because they're woman carriers now.
I cannot. Yeah.
But I assume so.
Let's go to Spaniard.
Okay, so every time so far I've been listening the entire conversation what's going on, and I heard so far two extremes. Why are people using the most rare and extreme case to fight for the right of abortion when rape is only 1% of the abortion and incest is only 0.5% of the abortion, which the highest and the majority of reason why people get abortion is just because?
It's not just because. No, it's not just because.
There's a stat that says 71%.
71% what?
Hold on.
I think
it
you
doesn't.
Elected.
If it's so rare, then why can't we just allow those kids?
Hold on, man. Elected abortion. Elected. That means elected. So that means they just
elected.
They chose a reason. They chose whatever reason they want. Right.
Yeah.
So I know
we aren't using.
I think it was you, Prime, and Dooby chose two extremes. Rape.
No,
and there was another one.
No, to be clear, I think women should be able to get an abortion for any reason at any time. Up to the babies coming out of the vagina, they should be able to get an abortion.
Absolutely, yeah. That's exactly my feelings as well. Women do it for all reasons.
I heard
and it's I don't know. I brought up the terms, but not for the reasons why it should happen. I'm saying that we shouldn't give when conservatives try to give exceptions as if they're giving us crumbs, right? We should reject that and instead fight for more, always. But I think that women have very good reasons, not just because, right? The reasons why women do these things are varied, right? And they do it because they don't have the money. They do it because
I'm just curious
they
though, Prime. Are you stating this comments purely because the woman is single, or is it in a relationship
oh,
with a husband or a boyfriend or
I
etc.?
I said before. I've been
I
doing
didn't
this for
hear
eight
it. That's
hours.
why I'm asking.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine.
Yeah, I
That's
know
fine.
I
That's
didn't.
fine. That's fine. So I'm saying I've just been doing this for 8 hours, so people haven't heard all my takes on this.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I said specifically that one, most women, according to the CDC, 6 out of 10 women who get an abortion already have a family. All right. Many of them are married themselves. So they're within a relationship. It doesn't matter one way or the other, right? Whether they are in a relationship or outside of one, they should have access. So yeah.
So if they're married, why isn't it a joint decision and you're just only indicating that it's the mother's decision?
I also said earlier, because we looked at a timeline and it talked about husband notification, right? That I was split on that one. Because like there's a possibility, faint one, that I could, impregnate some woman at some point in time. I would require me to have sex, and that doesn't happen. But it could happen, right? I could be in that position in which,
Yeah.
uh, but it would be terrible for me. It would be terrible if I found out maybe much later on, right? Maybe even years later, that she got an abortion and like I wasn't even notified. Like it's just I had no idea. I couldn't talk to her and like work it out with her. Maybe we had arrived at the same conclusion, but completely outside of that decision making process. That would actually suck. So I am split on like notifying the father on this. Though I understand that there are lots of reasons why that shouldn't be the case. Why women should just be able to do it. So yeah, I'm of two minds there.
Well, yeah,
Yeah,
I
I was
mean,
just asking questions because I wanted to confirm where some of this was going. Not only you, Prime, but anybody else that wants to answer the two questions I gave.
yeah, I mean, I'll answer that. I mean, just because abortion is so rare, or like just because the women who perform an abortion because they're rape is so rare, doesn't necessarily mean that they should have the right to do it, right? I mean, or or they shouldn't, right? Because I mean, we can think of other cases, right? Like, you know, uh, like somebody using a gun to defend themselves. That's also very, very rare. Though we still say that people should have the right to own a gun, right? You know, that's why rights exist in the first place, right? It's not necessarily only. It doesn't necessarily only exist because it's to protect a certain occasion, right? It's just, I mean, it's just a right. So.
I wonder, like overall, like would you guys like trust your own state, like if it's like a small state like Wisconsin? Sorry, I'm thinking about that other state, but
Don't make
regardless,
me
would
proud.
you guys like trust like smaller states to make like regulations around like abortion and that kind of stuff? Because there was, is it Wisconsin? But it's like 300,000 people are just living in there, and they basically can make like regulations around like abortion, that kind of stuff. It sounds like pretty weird and pretty like messed up. Like overall, I would just say that it would be better to make it like a federal thing, but it isn't, and that's what got overturned overall.
Right.
It
Before
just
Can I
before
just
you
but
say
yeah,
before
whatever,
before
you
you hold
know.
on before you guys go down this road, I want to address something. Someone asked me a question in chat. They asked me like a while ago, and I said I was going to answer it. And I just yeah. So I just want to do this, so then we can go back to this. They say to me, "Hello, it's Deep Smoo. Hello, hi. Thank you for being here." Let's say if you support abortion all the way up to the point of crowning, as you've said you do. This infers that you give the fetus no moral consideration. So would torture of the fetus be permissible? If not, why not? Mother's choice, right? And I'm curious what Dooby would say to this as well. But I would not be for the torture of the fetus or the baby. Now I'll say the baby for our friends,
Thank you, Prime.
Debatebore and Crystal Clear. All right, no problem. No, I don't run away from that term. Um, but I wouldn't. Sorry, I got feedback for a second. Okay, I wouldn't be for torture of the baby. In the same way, I'm not for the torture of livestock. So when it comes to like chickens, right? Like I'm gonna eat that chicken. I'm gonna kill that chicken. I'm gonna eat the chicken, right? But that doesn't mean I want to put that chicken into additional pain along the way, right? Not that it's less that I have. I'm not sure that counts as moral consideration. I don't know.
Well,
But
we do torture chickens. Let me just say.
Yeah, I don't like that.
Regularly.
Yeah, I'm not for that.
So
yeah,
my
I'm
position
not for
is
that.
my position
Cuban?
is a lot like Pramzo. I wasn't going to say livestock. I would say like a dog, right? Like a puppy, right? So the right to put that puppy down, right, is typically like up to the owner and up to the vet that they take the puppy to, right, for any reason. But that doesn't mean that the person can do whatever the fuck they want to that puppy, right? So just in the same way that I'd make it illegal for somebody to like punch a pregnant woman in the stomach and intentionally hurt the unborn baby, right? I'd consider that obviously like some form of not like if it killed the baby, I wouldn't consider it murder. I'd consider it something closer to like there's a term for it. Actually, no, I think it is just called fetal homicide in California. I need to look it up. But it's like it's a step down from like murder of like a human being, basically, right? So yeah, that doesn't mean that we can do whatever we want. All we're saying is the ultimate decision as to whether or not this baby has a life or doesn't have a life is on the person carrying the baby. That is it, right? That doesn't mean you can torture it just the same way you can't torture your dog legally.
I can't believe
Well, yeah,
Dooby
but you
cucked
can't-
out there and said based on the person having the baby.
Well, okay, the female, the woman having the baby. Okay,
Well, Dooby, you
Be
can't.
super
I thought we
clear.
called
I
them womb
watched-
carriers now.
I watched What Is Woman today actually. No, wait,
Oh, you
last
did?
night.
Oh, was it
Last
that?
night, and I'm like super like anti-gender ideology right now. Okay, like don't even try me. I'm like super against.
Oh, was it that
You were
good?
pilled?
Yeah, it's a really interesting movie. But I've been doing a lot of reading like before that, and even after that, I did a bunch of reading. I looked into some of the people that were like interviewed, and yeah, it's all bad.
Well, Dooby, I don't think your analogy necessarily works because you can't just put down a dog for whatever reason, right? Just because like you can't just kill a dog because you feel like it. You actually have to have a reason to put down the dog. But
Well, hold on, but the reason could be behavioral issues. The reason could be,
Right.
hey, the dog barks too much or bites, and and that's enough for the vet to say, hey, well, this dog is an inconvenience, so we're going to kill it. Right, so that's between the owner and the vet, right? So we don't get the state involved beyond that to say, oh well, what do you mean by behavior issues? What do you mean by you don't want this dog biting people, or this dog is an inconvenience, right? Or this dog has like a fucking like illness or whatever, right? So I think this is something that should be between the woman and the doctor. The doctor's willing to do the abortion, and the woman doesn't want the inconvenience of having this child in her anymore. Then get rid of it.
If I can jump in here real quick, Dooby, you're making a really good point here, and that's what the Dobbs court here talked about Roe and Casey and the companion cases is about the workability. And that's going to be a real problem as will red states attempt to either ban abortion or to restrict abortion is the practicality, right, of the laws that they're enacting. Those are going to be challenged. And I think that pro-abortion people ought to have some positive feeling about this, that, look, there is a workability characteristic here that the conservative justices on the court have already pointed out and will inherently hold the states to account for.
Okay. Anyone else?
Yeah, let me just say
Sorry,
on
go
that
ahead, Ika.
torture question, there has to be a conflict, right? So if torturing the fetus would save the life of the mother or whatever, if there was some sort of conflict, then you would have to weigh it out. It would sort of be a trolley problem, right? But it seems like in the question that was posed, it was just choice of the mother or fun. But that's not what any of these questions are decided upon, right? So it has to be a medical issue. Even under Roe, it has to be the privacy thing has to be a medical issue. And so then the question is, well, who do you trust? And it's really odd for me to hear, in the 60s and 70s, at the beginning of this, even before Roe, if you were to ask a conservative, they would tell you, I want the government, I want the smallest government possible. I don't want the government having that kind of power over what a woman and her doctor does. In fact, Ronald Reagan signed the most progressive pro-abortion legislation in our country's history when he was governor of California. And and he was plenty conservative at that point. But conservatives had to change politically in order to continue to call themselves conservatives, and which means they had to have suddenly a position where they trust government more than private individuals, more than a woman and her doctor.
No, that's not the case at all, Aiko. Traditional conservatives here in America have a particular perspective about the power of the national government, the authority and the scope of that authority of the federal government. Okay, and so in terms of talking about having a smaller federal government does not necessarily mean that they insist on smaller government all the way down the line. But even if they did, overturning Roe, an egregious judicial error, right, to return something that properly belongs to the state political processes is not an argument for enlarging the scope of the state.
Yeah,
the state
but
can choose or not choose to regulate in this area.
But I didn't talk about the federal government there.
Okay.
Because in this instance, I talked about Ronald Reagan, who was passing state law guaranteeing the right to abortion, and also saying that no, just in general, you would want smaller government. Now, Catholics have the same principle too. We believe that anytime a decision can devolve into a smaller unit of government, then it should. And so that particular principle means that yes, states should have more power than the federal government, but it goes down even further that cities should have more power than the state. And of course, that's where the Republicans stop, because cities tend to be liberal and state legislatures tend to be conservative. And so Republicans now would prefer that states be able to overrule cities, and they do on a regular basis. We've had governors come in and invalidate entire mayoral governments and take over with the city manager appointed by the governors. It happened several times with Republicans in order to get more conservative policies into the cities. So this idea of smaller government always being better, that's not something we see in today's Republican Party. They want the power to devolve to whatever area Republicans control. And in this case, it's state legislatures.
One second, you'll go right now. I just gotta say too, our friend Aiko, this is your first time on the panel, and someone has paid to mute you, so you're doing
Narita
something
says,
right here.
Badass.
Muting for 10 minutes. Sorry, Narita, I didn't mean to miss it previously. I didn't mean to ignore it. I just didn't see it. I apologize. But 10 minutes, and then you'll be back up. Go ahead, Isle.
Okay, so concerning that Republicans are trying to gerrymander things into institutions that they control to enact their policies. That's true, definitely true. But Democrats do it the same way. That's where you get like all this talk about expanding the court, eliminating the electoral college, expanding Senate by adding new states that they know will most likely be more Democrat leaning, and other things of that nature in order to gerrymander it to make it more amenable to them and their institutions. So I mean, it's the same thing. It's just like So it's not like one group is doing it, and the other one is just and they're just running unopposed. So I would think that if the states have their say, then these communities can have their case be made in a way that will allow them to get the message across that they want, and then hopefully the majority of a state can choose how they want to live in that state going forward. I think that would be the best way to do it.
Yeah, so that's actually the way most of this is going to work. Right now, of course, we have the trigger laws, but that went into place. But likely, what's going to happen is exceptions for like uh, health of the mother and stuff. If they're not codified into law, will get codified into law fairly soon, or through the court process. That's going to be an easy one that gets done if it's not in law. Some laws have them that I've seen. Most of them do. I think Alabama might not, and Louisiana might not, but I haven't seen if Louisiana put anything new out in the past like 2 days. But yeah, very easily ones that are probably going to happen are defense of the mother, and the core arguments for that go back to self defense rights. So a mother can have a self defense right if the baby's going to potentially kill her. So that's what that all divines out of.
Okay.
I think what'll be fascinating going forward here is the extent to which Democrats, progressives, and other leftists will choose to participate in the political process and choose to try to persuade and influence as opposed to cajole, malign, and otherwise attack those they disagree with as simply sexist bigots. I think going forward, that'll be quite fascinating to watch unfold. Pardon me?
No, that's going to stay the same. That's going to stay the same. It's not going to change at all.
Well, Debatebore.
That's too bad too.
Debatebore, I want to ask. So, like, do you care about too much governmental control? Because I think Aiko brought up a really good point, right? If you actually do care about too much governmental control, then why would you also be
He
for like
doesn't.
restricting?
He'll use that as like a useful like figment, but
let him
see. So Pro-Mess is doing just what I was, referring to here, and rather than attempt to understand an opposing viewpoint or perhaps even the rationale behind it, what he would rather do is simply insist that, oh no, the Debatebore here doesn't care about women. He hates women. That's what explains the disagreement.
Did I ever say that? No.
So
I don't think that coffee was finished in the first place. So
nonetheless, coffee. I think. Yeah, coffee. The small government.
Shut up, debate.
The small government.
Shut up, debate. Let coffee talk.
Coffee said he was finished.
You said you were finished.
I wasn't finished, but I think you are.
Yeah, go for it.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Well, I mean, I think you already understood my point, right? I was gonna say, like, if you care about government not having too much control in people's lives, then why would you also be for like restricting abortion, right? It just doesn't make sense to me.
Because I have an interest in the proper exercise of control, right? There are places where government want to exert control over the population. That's why conservatives and folks like me support, right, the penal code. We support criminalizing specific behaviors. That is an expression of governmental control. So that I have a preference for smaller government doesn't mean that I don't want any government at all, right? That's why Aiko's point is a rather silly one and is used really to grab a rhetorical point than it is to actually make a point at all. So in this space, because as I've stated before, I think unborn lives deserve protections from the state. And I believe then that the exertion of state control is proper in this area. Now, that is much different than saying, I don't think the state should have any influence into whatever fucking light bulb I want to use in my house or whatever dishwasher or toilet I want to use, whether it uses 2.4 gallons per flush or 1.6 gallons. Fuck the government. Get the hell out of there. You have no role in this. So I can advocate for specific types of government control when I think it is correct or right.
Yeah, but I mean, I think what you just said, what was the last thing you just said was pretty important, right? So you said that you only care about governmental control when you think it's right or important, right? So it doesn't seem like you actually do care about government having too much power. You just only care like on whether or not they're right or not.
Well, I guess replace the word right with proper. I think the state there are proper areas for the state to act, right? So that's and here when it comes to protecting unborn lives, I think the state has a proper role to act.
Okay, so I have a few points and then I'm gonna bounce. If that's cool, can I say it? Prime, you look like you were gonna say something.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. So like one of the reasons that I believe it's good for there to be federal regulation, to Chinchilla's question earlier, was like Texas has a composition of like 80% of the population of like 34 million people living in very four clustered cities, right? I think it ends up being less than 20% of the total land mass of Texas. Um, and then you have the remaining land mass that elects all of the officials. So it's a very few with very specific ideologies that motivate it, and it controls a very large swath of people's lives. I think a federal law ends up making it so you don't have people just getting their rights taken away. I think that to Spaniard's question earlier, like the exceptions aren't excuses, and people do hold them up because it's a reason why somebody would want to have an abortion. But I think more importantly,
I'm
like
sorry. Hold up. I wasn't talking about like voting rights and that kind of stuff.
no,
So,
I know,
uh,
but the thing is that like whenever you talk about a federal regulation, you establish something across the board instead of having like uh, the rural minority, essentially in this case, like controlling the way that. Like,
no, but you were talking about like gerrymandering and that kind of stuff and
no,
all
I didn't say anything
that
about
that
gerrymandering.
just But I wasn't talking about that. I was saying about that you could like regulate like abortions probably better on like a national level
Yeah,
compared to like
that's
a
I
state
agree.
level, and and you are saying like, well, you got all this gerrymandering going on. I don't care for
I said
that.
nothing about gerrymandering.
No,
I'm saying the way that
I don't
the
care
way
for
that.
that.
Okay,
That's the
that's
thing.
cool. Um, but I don't know if any of this were like really about preserving life. Like there are 425,000 children in like foster care in America right now. Like we'd have better schools, we'd have better childcare education. Like children wouldn't go into debt getting school lunches. Like if this shit were really about
Completely
like
different
preserving
issue.
life, no, it's fucking not. You're saying like preserving life. Like if you were gonna do some shit, you'd have done some shit for the ones that are already fucking here, not the ones that aren't. So I don't
Actually,
know.
I have. I did foster a child for. I did foster a child for a year. So no, they're very different things.
Yeah, I think he just left.
Well, he said he was going
He
to leave
bounced.
eventually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But
he had said something that I wanted to pick up on, but I already forgot
go,
it because he bounced over to
Hey,
Chinchilla.
can I ask a question?
go ahead, please.
Oh, I think my headset died. One second.
Nub.
Okay,
Huh.
can you hear me? I'm here. Okay.
Yeah,
So for the people that are on the right side of history and the argument in like Canada, and are in favor of abortion rights.
Wait,
So
no,
what's
that's
but
not true.
also but also unfortunately on the wrong side of history and logic, and also like in favor of democracy. What is the issue with allowing this to be left up to the states if you're so in favor of democracy? Like, isn't that just making it more democratic?
They might not get their way. That's being uncharitable, but that's what it is.
Primus is true.
I think it's
sorry.
a good question.
Sorry. Could you repeat that
Okay,
last
so
part? Of the question?
you're in favor of abortion rights, but
Yeah.
also in favor of democracy, unfortunately.
Uh-huh.
So, given that the Supreme Court decision puts this back in the hands of the states, where where we have a much stronger version of democracy than exists in the Supreme Court,
Right.
why not be okay with that? Like, why is that a problem?
I was gonna ask that one too, Dooby. I was gonna ask that one also.
So, like I told our friend Debatebore previously, I'm not completely opposed to the fight within the states, because I think we should have to make our case, right? We should have to make our case on a democratic stage why abortion access is absolutely paramount. I'm getting some background noise. It's that background noise. Where's that coming from?
That was me. My
No problem. Okay. Yeah. So I think we should absolutely make our case. But I don't think necessarily it has to be on the state level. I think that we can do it on a federal level. And in fact, so many of my opponents agree with me because they want to have a federal ban on abortions. That's what they're fighting for. So I'm okay with making the fight. I don't think we should have left it up to the courts in the first place. Let's actually fight it out through democratic means. I'm for that. Go ahead.
But
Now, I have
isn't it?
another. Go
Oh,
ahead,
I have a
sir.
question to go along with this trail. Uh, Prime doesn't, but isn't the smaller government in better for the people because you have a little bit more power than you do actually leaving it up to the federal?
No, so something I was going to say previously is that I don't think that basic human rights, and I think access to abortion is a basic human right. I don't think that's something that should be like a patchwork, right? You shouldn't have access to a basic human rights in one state, not another. So I think it has to be blanket. So I'm fine with doing this on the federal level,
Did you
but
say it's a
let's do
did you say it's a
democratic means.
basic
But
human
yeah.
right or not?
I said
Right.
basic,
I don't
yes,
think
basic. I said
So I
basic
remember.
human right.
Okay,
you think it's
I remember the thing I wanted to actually bring up. It's like the difference between like rights and privileges, right? So like you have a right to travel between states, but you don't have a right to drive a car. You have a privilege to drive a car, and it's like kind of like a similar concept. You have a right to have sex or not have sex, or a right to like family planning, but that doesn't necessarily mean you have a right to stuff that comes afterwards. Where I think like where like the abortion argument kind of hinges on, because it's kind of been like an abdication for accountability of your own actions.
Accountability of your own actions. What? You can get pregnant for all kinds of reasons, not your own fucking actions. What you can?
that's why we have the touch of a rape.
I think seeing
No,
pregnancy
no,
as,
not
as like a
rape.
punishment is really fucking weird, to be honest.
Incest?
No, not incest.
Or
Not talking
or
about
you
that,
couldn't,
right?
or you couldn't find a condom that day, but you wanted to put her in her anyway. Like it's that.
Oh, ignore. Sorry, ignore
Or
Judy.
you could, or you
No,
could be
but
like,
like
for example, like
pregnancy
Drake.
isn't a punishment. Like that's so weird.
Pregnancy absolutely is not a punishment. That's the way they look at it, though. But
I didn't say pregnancy was a punishment.
yeah. But literally, this line of reasoning leads to that. But however, the point is though that
Consequence
there are
is,
other
I
ways.
think, the right word.
Consequences.
Yeah,
sure,
Prime.
but-
That's Prime. Just to interrupt here, I think. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Go
Go.
ahead.
Your
No,
panel.
you go ahead,
Okay,
then I'll
thank
go
you.
ahead. Don't worry.
You're so charitable. No, I think consequence is the correct word to use here, and it's a meaningful word, right? Because while some people want to smear pro-lifers, or at least people who advocate restricting abortion as wanting to are as forced birthers, right? They overlook the fact that what it's astonishingly rare that somebody gets pregnant on accident. And as a result of a rape, incest, or sexual assault. And so consequently, the very act that results in pregnancy was voluntary. And so this isn't a punishment. No one views it as a punishment. They view it as a natural consequence of your choice, of your behavior. And in that case, I'm absolutely pro-choice.
Yeah, you should have accountability for those actions.
Yeah, so
but you are. That's why you need to go out and get an abortion, right? So hey, you did a thing. Now what happened because you did that thing is you got pregnant, and now you need to go out and schedule an appointment to get an abortion. Like I don't understand why the consequence, quote unquote, can't be like addressed, right? You're basically taking away people's ability to deal with the consequences of their actions, if you want to think of it that way.
Right.
Oh,
I mean,
because-
this is a consequence-free life,
argument.
right?
Like it's really not. It's about removing the consequence of your own actions.
Well, there's also
not.
It's not a fun. Getting an abortion isn't like a fun procedure for these women, right? So hey, they did it. They did a thing.
I don't know. I see lots of them celebrating on TikTok these days.
It was a bad decision, and now they're pregnant. So now the consequence is they need to go through the hassle of scheduling an appointment, going through the fucking terrible abortion process, deal with feeling sick, even if they're just given like the pill version of like the abortion, right? That, like forces like a miscarriage or whatever. That's a terrible
That
process.
need
It
to
makes you feel
be the
sick for like
consequence
weeks.
and not.
Right? So like that is the consequence you guys
Why
are looking
does
for.
that
So if you want
need
them to
to
be
be-
punished, they're still being punished.
So 1 second. Aiko, you're unmuted. So I didn't know it was longer than 10 minutes. I apologize. I lost track of it. So it's in this case, right? Like, oh yeah, that's what I was going to go with. You guys seem to be confused as to what I meant when I said that, like, sometimes it's beyond your actions, right? Like, apparently people here can't use their imaginations. This happens all the time to individuals. People get pregnant and they don't mean to, right? They use all protection, right? They have an IED. They may be using a condom, but still, birth control fails. Birth control fails all the time, and they may not be prepared for that situation. And so they get pregnant, and they might need an option to get out of that. There's also cases where you're not quote unquote raped, but you are coerced, right? Because people have sex for all kinds of reasons.
That's why I
Not
said incest is a problem.
that's not. No, it's not. You're not understanding that. These are not the same things. People
If
have
you're
sex.
coerced by your family to have
No,
sex,
no,
Well,
you're not.
to me,
Please,
incest is
excuse me.
forced.
Hold on. Oh, excuse me. Please listen.
Oh my God!
That's
what the
not
hell
what
are
I
we doing?
mean. Yeah, that's not what I mean. I'm saying that when people are having sex, people engage in sexual activities. There's sometimes people do it when they don't necessarily feel like it, right? They'll do it for their partner, right? Like, I don't feel like having sex. My partner really wants to have sex. Okay, I guess, right? So I'll do it that way. That isn't a person being raped. That's a person being accommodating their partner. But again, and that accommodation could have included birth control, but it doesn't work for whatever reason. And so they're in this situation. There's all kinds of ways. There's all kinds of ways. Excuse me, I'm still talking. What the fuck, please. There's all kinds of ways in which individuals can get themselves pregnant, and it's not necessarily like their action, but one way or the other, even if it is their action, right? Like using this type of mentality is like, well, you have to deal with the consequences of it, right? Well, yeah, they are. Just like GB said, so as a responsible adult, they are deciding that they cannot take care of this child, and so like the best option for them is to terminate the pregnancy, right? Just like others can make that same go down that same logic route and decide that maybe I should keep the baby, or I should put the baby up for adoption, or whatever, right? That is them taking responsibility. Is through reproductive services, which is why we have to allow access to it. Now I'm done.
okay, but
I guess I went.
Prime. In your mind, should not saying it is, but should abortion be available for convenience sake? Yes or no?
Absolutely. I told you there are no obstacles. No obstacles.
I didn't hear that part.
even in the third trimester.
Yeah, hold on. Okay, so you haven't heard my argument. Myself and Dooby, we believe that when talk about access to abortion services, it should be available up to the baby crowning. That's what I believe.
Yep. And that's really just because the moment they crown, they receive the social contract of like rights and protections under the Constitution as a citizen.
But why?
In some cases, where it might make
Dooby,
sense
why though?
to abort post birth, right? For children that are born with terrible like malformations or whatever, or in pain and or I forget what there's a word for this, right? But there are children that are born with conditions that are not going to survive. Right, and for whatever reason, if these things weren't caught pre-birth, if the child is born and they have fucking like Harlequin's ichthyosis or whatever the fuck it's called, or any of these other diseases or illnesses that have like that cause a massive pain, and there's a very slim chance they're going to survive even after they're born. There's a good case to allow the parents to choose to abort them or to end
Hey,
their life.
Dooby, what does
So
about 10 or 12
Hold on.
inches matter though in terms of at crowning? I mean, what
It's literally everything.
what is
It's how we
magical
decide
about
it's how we decide
what is
who's like a
magical
separate human
about
being.
crowning that all of a sudden this
It's not magical.
thing this thing now is entitled to something?
It's like
what happens?
it's like a border. It's like a border, right? Somebody steps over a border into the United States. They're protected by the Constitution, but even if they're not a citizen, they're granted some limited rights under the Constitution just because they're here. Right? So it's magical in the sense that it's a social construct. Social construct that we've come up with. So that, hey, this
Right,
is
so it's a social construct we've invented.
Become
We can
citizen.
uninvent it, though,
yeah,
right?
of course. Yeah.
Okay, so then you're on board with the boarding to win.
Just like all these things. No,
It's not just a crowning. I mean,
hold on, but I think I'm in favor of it because I think it's reasonable to say that, hey, we don't really have a clear line here. So the line of the vagina makes sense to me, right? So the moment they become a citizen and they have rights and protections under the Constitution as a separate citizen of the United States, right? That's the moment it's not okay to abort.
Would you be cool with moving that line though to say 59 minutes after birth?
Give me a good reason.
Have up until 59
well,
minutes.
Well, hold on. I gave you a good reason. It might make sense to move that line in some cases. Right, so
the woman has birthed this child, and now all of a sudden has second thoughts and says, you know, whoa, I'm totally unprepared for this. I know.
At that point, the child's a citizen of the United States, with all the rights and protections granted thereof. Okay. Right, so if they want to give up their legal, if they want to give up their legal guardianship, they can do that. I'm totally in favor of allowing parents to do that.
All right.
Right,
So wait,
and then we pass on the.
That's fair. I appreciate that. Thank you.
The child becomes a ward of the state, and there you go.
So wait,
thank you. I appreciate that.
Okay, say hypothetically, right? We define citizens as those from the moment of conception. Would you then be okay with outlawing it then? Because you say as soon as we would grant standard citizenship, then that would be they would withhold all those.
I understand, but give me a good reason to outlaw or to like move the line backwards, right? So into the womb. I'm saying a citizen. Well, give me a good reason. So I'm in favor of this.
Are you okay with?
Give me a reason. The other thing.
Because they're humans, so they would.
Sake of the argument,
we're all okay with killing humans sometimes, right? I think this is one of those times I'm okay with killing a human.
Yeah, but
yeah,
you know, if
I'm saying if we move this line,
shouldn't be able to kill them.
I'm okay with moving the line if you can give me a good reason to believe we should move the line, right? So like, I agree that where this line is right now for me, for everybody, is completely like a social construct that we've come up with, right, as a society, and that's okay. This is how human society works.
Wait, so
right?
what if?
Like, give me a good reason to disagree with my line right now.
Why does?
Can I ask this just real quick?
Okay, why does crowning matter, but not like the whole body?
What do you mean? Why does crowning matter, but not the whole body? So the moment, like I said, they're a separate entity, right? So the moment they've come out and they're being taken out of the womb, that's when they're no longer like part of the mother anymore for me. Right?
Yeah, we're just using crowning
in the United States. Yeah.
Yeah, we're just using crowning as a term, but like as it is an easy term, it doesn't matter. Like
yeah. So Dooby,
let's go to coffee. Go ahead.
Yeah. So Dooby. So okay. So what about if a baby is born at 6 months, right? Would they still have a right of citizenship?
If it's out of the mother, yeah, of course.
Even at 6 months, right? Like if a
yeah. So if it's alive 6 months, right, and it's like in a fucking what are those called? I don't know what they're called. You know what I mean?
Those incubators.
The incubator thing, right? Because it was like born too early or whatever the fuck, right? Then yeah, it's still separate from the mother. It's a separate entity. And citizen in the United States with all the rights and protections, right there. So yeah, it has a right to life there, and the state can't just arbitrarily decide to kill it, right? If the mother wants to give up her rights to like guardianship, right, her legal responsibility to be the guardian of this baby, sure, go for it. Right? That's totally fine. But then it becomes a ward of the state, and the state decides what to do with it.
Well, then I don't know. At that point, it just kind of seems a little bit arbitrary because it's just like, okay, well, if the fetus or baby, if the fetus or baby somehow survives of getting out the womb, then it automatically is being granted citizenship, whether it's like 2 months, 3 months, or 9 months.
That's precisely the reasoning for Roe when it sets the standard. So the 24-week standard that's set in Roe, the reason for that is it was thought at the time that was the the moment of viability, because viability is what's key for that determination under Roe, which is to say, if a fetus could theoretically survive outside of the womb, then the bodily integrity question goes away. And so at the time, it was thought that the earliest that viability
hold
would
on,
occur was 20
To be fair, that's outdated, right? The
Yeah,
24
because
weeks.
now
Roe had
21
it.
weeks.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm just saying it's outdated.
yes, it is.
Yeah.
Today, the earliest birth that has survived outside the womb now is 21 weeks, but at the time it was 24.
Yeah.
20 weeks.
Exactly. 20. Yeah. Yeah.
You
20
could generously say 20, and there were a lot of 20-week laws that were created as a compromise in a lot of states, and they never really hit the courts the way they expected, because then we got a conservative court that went way further than that. But there's a very good chance 20-week rule could have won the liberal justices, because it would have proven that, because it's proven now that the line could happen there.
No,
but that's
no.
not a random standard. That's the question is, can it survive outside the womb? If it can, bodily integrity is no longer an issue.
No.
So but I need to make this very clear, right? This idea of surviving outside of viability, right? Like, if you actually talk to individuals who work in NICUs, people who have expertise in this, right? Of preemies, yes, sure. With intensive medical technology, that you can get a child to survive after 21 weeks, but that child is not going to be okay. That child is going to have deficiencies. That child, in terms of mental deficiencies, physical deficiencies going up, right? This is not an optimal outcome. It's like 21, being viable at 24 weeks is not the same. That child is not the same as a child who has had 9 months, right? And is then given birth. Right? So we need to understand these things. So I don't care about the idea of viability, to be sure.
Right, Prime, can I jump in here real quick? The whole viability standard has always been backwards and largely illogical anyway. It's backwards because one might say that waiting until viability to protect the right to abortion is just gets completely backwards. Up until viability, the fetus needs the mother's body in order to live. Yet we give the mother the right to remove the baby from her body during that period when it is most vulnerable. Yet, at the moment when the baby can survive without needing to live inside the mother's body, we oddly at that point say, yeah, you can kill the baby. This is why the viability standard has been roundly criticized ever since Roe was decided, because it's stupid. It's just backwards and illogical.
Well, we use the same standard when it comes to the example I gave about somebody needing your liver in order to survive, right? We just let that person die rather than violate your bodily integrity to get half of your liver out for the donation. Right? We still need your consent for that. We need your ongoing consent in order for that to happen. But in the case of a woman who's pregnant, her consent's not necessary.
Okay. So I have been doing this for 9 hours. I don't want to do it for 10. So guys, I'm being selfish. I'm clearly being very selfish, right? Everyone, thank you so much for coming through. This has been a great show, and it's been great because of all the kind of people who jumped into the different panels, and everyone who was in Twitch chat for this whole long thing. I thought we did a lot of interesting work. I thought we talked about this from so many different angles, and we might actually have a regular debate on this on Monday in terms of referee, to focus on a single question, not people yell at each other about it. But one or the other, guys, thanks so much for coming through. Hit that follow button if you haven't done so yet. Make sure notifications are on so you know I'm going live with this all the time. ! Social in chat. For our social media, we have a lot of it. we have Twitter, where we tweet things, let you know what's going on with the channel. Please be a part of that. Discord, Heart and Soul, the community. This conversation happens in Discord, right? And all our conversations happen there. Please be a part of our Discord, whether it be in voice or in text. We love to have you. Hit us up. TikTok is where you'll find amusing videos from this channel, all right? So check that out. And YouTube, of course, is where you'll find the VODs. So like, comment, subscribe, consider becoming a YouTube member, hitting that join button, supporting us that way if you are liking that content 7 nights a week. So thank you all so much. I am going to send you off to our friend. We're going to send you off to our friend, Wicked Supreme, because he's one of the few people around who's streaming right now. So I think it's the right.
But before you go, like Brian, guys, if you are if you are a first time watcher right now, follow Prime. He is trying to make this all go together, and like all these crazy battles with these crazy people, like including me, right? So he is making to try this work. So please consider following him or subscribing to him and doing more for him. It doesn't matter, but he is a good guy. Come on, guys, just follow him.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, you got to support people who support you. And he's
Hell
been
yeah.
supporting this community the whole time. He's been here every day doing the Reverie, Amazon Lily, All Black Everything.
Yes. I
doing
love
panels. And what other show do you do? What other show?
I do lots of stuff.
Lots of stuff. And like 6 days a week, right?
Yeah.
Or how many
I'm just
days?
waiting for the all white cis male panel.
We got you all white.
Okay.
We got you the all white panel. You're just gonna have to accept that much. Yeah, that was amazing.
That one.
Yeah, that was legendary. So, but yeah,
amazing.
Yeah. Hey, I wanted to thank before you guys ran away. I wanted to thank the people who came through here. Seriously, all of you, much appreciated. Thank you for stopping by. And I love to have you back again. Our new faces, please come through. You all were actually really good. And I'd like to have you all for like a close panel sometime, like Aiko, and Coffee, and our friend Isle here. I think those are all the new people. But I would love to have you for a close panel. Would you guys be interested in that?
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. When's the
All
next
right.
one?
We have a Monday,
I see how it is,
Thursdays,
Brian.
and Saturdays.
Is there a place for us to send requests on topics?
My DMs are the place to send them.
Okay.
But yeah. In fact, I'm going to send you a friend request. Isle and Coffee. What do you guys identify as in terms of
Pronouns or what do you mean?
No, race. Sorry, excuse me.
Oh, black.
Black.
Yeah.
Black. All right, just wanted to make sure. All right. Well, then we love to have you as well. Be incorrect.
I don't want to identify as black. Can I come the opposite?
Oh my god.
I'm sorry. That one's in the history book.
I know it's
I'm sorry. I was the one that was cracking up, and then as well, so it was like, yeah. I'm sorry.
No problem.
That new One Piece chapter.
There is no new One Piece chapter. But you guys were fantastic. I love that you had different opinions. Right, we're always looking for that. So thank you for showing up. I'll be hitting you up, but accept my friend request, and then I'll send you a message and all that good stuff.
Cool.
All right.
This has been great.
That's pretty special because not everybody gets an invite.
You gotta see your face. I would love Debatebore to have
Yeah, but
I'm kidding. I'm
Do you get a cam? Do you get a cam? If you get a cam, turn it on, and he probably invites you.
I will
You know?
absolutely invite you.
Oh, of course he will. I know. No, this is me.
100%. Just get a
Showing
phone
up.
cam, dude.
Make Dooby show his face.
The frog.
No, Doobie's special, man.
I
He's
remember
special.
that.
I know he's
Frog
special.
is
Ed.
literally-
You don't have to
You don't
say
need
it's
to.
Debatebore.
Well, he kind of
Wait,
shows
I
his
forgot
face. He has
to-
a
Maybe
virtual face.
to
It moves
do.
around. It moves its lips. It's
I know.
I am a dog
I'm
fan.
just giving him a little.
Debatebore,
I'm sharing something a
maybe.
little more personal with you than my face. Okay, that's literally.
I
like,
know.
this weird animal.
It's your
That's my soul.
internal frog king soul. I
Yeah.
got you, dude.
I need to go,
Oh,
but I
oh,
forgot
wait,
to mention
Doobie,
this
Doobie,
earlier.
I
they
need
have
the skinny on what happened with that after the stone Q&A.
Oh yeah, I banned Roger Stone and his representative guy because they're dickheads. After
Really?
the AMA though, I planned to do
Why?
a mid AMA and have Destiny ambush Roger Stone, but Destiny didn't want to do the ambush, so I had to wait till the end. And then I banned them.
Why though?
Because so Roger won like a 2-hour commercial, which I didn't like. They literally had like planned and scripted questions where they'd bring people to his merch, and they had like little snippets and shit where they could like, it was literally they had like you know how they had like planned like audience members and shit on like talk shows. It was that kind of thing, right? Where they have people who would come on, pretend to be someone asking a genuine question. The entire thing was scripted. The answer was scripted. It was really gross. It took me weeks to get him to agree to have like non-right wingers on, because he wanted all right wingers to be able to ask questions. Nobody that didn't support him could ask a question. And so it took months to get him to agree to that. And then he had this requirement that this Goldie guy, or Benjamin, was the co-host. And this guy was fucking insufferable. He was using his the leverage provided by him being a requirement for having the AMA to go like basically treat people on my server like shit for like over a month. Making like dox threats, harassing people, calling trans people the T word, telling people to kill themselves, sharing around pictures of people, just being a total piece of shit, and demanding immunity on the server as a requirement for getting a second AMA set up. So at the end of it, I just said, fuck you, and I banned him, and then Roger.
Good for you.
Banned him too.
Good for you.
Yeah. I wanted to say I'm having an AMA with Buck Angel tomorrow. Well, today technically at 3 Eastern. So if you guys are interested in talking to Buck Angel, you can hop in.
Hey, I might actually do that. Thank you so much, Doobie.
Yeah. No problem.
Doobie, what I gotta
when you show up, and I'll make sure you get a chance to talk to him.
Thank you.
He's a
Thank
great
you.
guest. He's very, very controversial in both communities or in many communities. And he'll give you the kinds of answers you won't hear from other people.
Yeah, well,
Hey,
Buck
Prime,
Angel did that
thanks
other
again
panel.
for having
nice.
us on. I'm going to bounce here, and it was great talking with Coffee and Aiko. It was great talking to you again. It's been quite a while. Doobie, go fuck yourself, but I'll stop by tomorrow and hear Buck Angel. You guys have a great night.
Yeah, and Hypertroller, I was just going to quickly say, if you want to be part of the closed panels, you can. The last time though, you had issues with your setup, correct?
Yeah.
Remember that?
So that I was trying to get was it we were on StreamYard, right, or whatever?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was trying to get that set up on my laptop. My laptop's an old piece of shit.
Yeah.
And I don't think I can run StreamYard from my phone.
Yeah, you can't. So has that changed?
Fuck no. Dog, I'm poor, dog. Poor.
Okay. Well, then when it does change in the future, let me know. Because we'd love to have you, actually.
I'm slaving away in the Bezos warehouses.
Okay. All right. Well, that's probably where you belong. Okay. Bye.
Yeah. Yeah, but I was gonna say
I got
too,
the company secrets.
Yeah, I was gonna say I gotta go too, but thanks for having me on, Prime.
Yep. Have a good one.
Yeah.